There you go, it works now. Guys, let me know if there's any audio problems because I don't know, because. There we go. AI day. If there's any audio problem, let me know. Thanks, man. Hopefully everything works good. Okay, that's good. Alright, let's see our 0.01% chance of Elon mentioning Meta in his presentation. I mean, despite Meta, I do think Tesla's gonna announce something very interesting because the autonomous car function is not really ready. As we theorized in school about 2 or 3 years ago, when we're taking our general venture capitalist training, when I was helping one of the bigger accelerators on the East Coast, which is called Skydeck, which is the accelerator in Berkeley. When we're doing those kind of stuff, we theorized that fully autonomous cars is not going to be ready in the next 8 to 10 years. Like, one of us think it's 5 years, but a lot of I agree with some of the VCs that are our mentors that we think in a decade it's not going to be ready, because especially with what Elon's trying to do. Elon's trying to eliminate LiDAR, radar, and just use human error to correct what is wrong with machine learning. So basically this entire thing is like this. Of course he's not gonna admit that, right? So what he's gonna do is, so you're gonna drive your Tesla car, and then he's gonna let you drive, right? And you put your hands on the wheel. The whole purpose of putting your hands on the wheel is when the machine learning algorithm fails, the car might automatically turn into just say a fire truck. And then your job is to stop it. And then whenever you stop it, that data point is going to be isolated from the entire data set, and then the machine learning engineer is going to look at it and be like, oh shit, what is going on here, right? We cannot eliminate noise from all of the things that's going on within this data set, so maybe we should do something else to feed the model more fire truck images so you won't run into it. Thank God that the human actually stopped it. So by buying into the $10,000 autonomous car function, you literally opt into a human experiment. You opt into basically a human experiment where you didn't really sign any waiver forms per se, but your job is to stop the data set from running into trucks and what do you call that, ambulance trucks or whatever, all this kind of stuff. Because in order to lower the cost of Tesla Model S, Model 3, all the models, including the new Cybertruck, they took out all the radars, and Tesla doesn't sign any partnership with any LiDAR companies, even though last year there is a LiDAR company had a breakthrough in their LiDAR range. They just decided to take all of those measures out and just use cameras. And according to number 2, Sterling is saying there's so many things Meta can do with Tesla. That is totally not true, because Elon doesn't need it. Elon literally doesn't need any of the technology that Meta will provide. Maybe battery, but George doesn't really buy into any battery tech, not as far as we know right now. So yeah, and if you go look at the 4 PhDs that he hired, One of them, wait, let me just show you guys real quick. He didn't hire the most important one. There's one person from the Duke University, that is the pioneer of metamaterial manufacturing. So he hired this person. So Andre, this person is the invisibility cloak sort of person, but not as prominent as the Duke University one. And this person is microtronic and microwave metamaterial manufacturing, and this person and also is basically like the nano component metamaterial and do a lot of bioengineering. I don't know how Meta is paying them. Usually those members on the science board get like a flat % of stock options, but I don't know how this works. And I honestly think it's way better for him to invest in some good business people instead of just get a bunch of PhDs that how to say this in a nicer way. And also it's bad to get a bunch of PhDs who just like, you know, running around in the lab trying to figure things out, and running around the lab burns a lot of money and takes a lot of time. It's already been what, year 10, year 15 now for Meta, and it's still not even any profitability. If you go look at this company, right, like they also do road-to-road production. I'm pretty sure you can literally use the same production method but for nano components. It's called micro continuum. They're already making millions dollars of revenue. So as an outside investor, you really need to look at the issue and be like, oh, what is the closest timeline that they're gonna actually, you know, become profitable? And you know, he haven't demonstrated that he's able. He have the ability to really run this company into a green sort of situation. So hey, maybe this company will run in the low 2s, you know, between 2 and 3. And you see like there are a lot of pent-up volume. Like you will see a lot of pent-up volume, like I said. And also in Patreon, I highlighted what are some important stuff going forward. So right now, if you look at this, so this entire, the MMs and everyone's gonna trap the stock around $2 to $3. And then the market's literally just gonna decide whether it's gonna run from, you know, lower 3s to almost 4, but not nearly 4, or they're gonna run from lower 3s to like higher 2s, and by the end of September it's gonna be like lower 2 or even faster, right? And then one of the reasons that sell is because it's literally, I don't want to see another 50% decrease from $3. I mean, it's possible to go to $1.5, and if that happens, that means my freed up liquidity didn't really take that hit. I could just literally use the same liquidity to buy back, and I can trade options upon that. And let's say if George decided to, you know, if George ever decided to actually do another reverse split, then we just plan accordingly, right? It's really stupid to just let your liquidity dry in a company that might not be profitable in the next 4 years. Questions? No questions? I don't even know if anyone's watching because everybody's gonna go watch Sterling's live stream or whatever. But yeah, he's just way too optimistic, and you know, he might pay more than the 50% cost I'm paying, and I'm gonna do due diligence on other companies, and probably the money's gonna be back, like, you know, more steadily or whatever. So for me, it doesn't really matter. 50% loss, the tuition that I pay for, you know, understanding that, hey, sometimes you can be too hopeful. Sometimes you have a vision for the company, but if the CEO doesn't share your same vision, sometimes you won't get to the same place. You might as well just, you know, cut loss at 10% and just leave. You're watching and chatting in Discord? I have too many financial statements going on. Yeah, I won't show. There you go. Dude, every time AI Day is always late. Battery Day was late 30 minutes, and AI Day is gonna be late. Let me see what you guys are saying on Discord. Probably trolling again. Why is it saying everybody's talking about dividend? There is a reason. It's like, I was trying to be funny this morning. tell Ball that I'm willing to sell my dividend shares. I mean, if anyone want to buy it from me, I'll have a price and I'll sign a contract with you. What is interesting is why is it trading at 7? There's a reason for that. If it's actually true, that means people are actually trading for dividend shares. If it's right now trading at 7, that means the market is overtly optimistic to how much it's gonna sell, and it's ultimately gonna be very bad news. So, yeah. Anyways, there you go. Oh, you guys are chatting, I guess. Yeah. We're watching and chatting in Discord. It's almost Friday. Not yet. Not yet. We're not called Madam Millennials for reasons. Why else would they host this event? Oh, it's gonna be so late. So just want to take a nap or something. It's not 7. The lady on Twitter was just dumb. Didi, how come you don't address us as meta millennials? Like, meta millionaires, like younger says? Because in order to be millionaires, you have to wait at least 6 years, and you have to sort of have to will the market to agree with you that they think it's ready for meta material to roll out into commercialization. Like there's a difference between I produce something at a reasonable cost. Maybe you can achieve that, right? Maybe George can achieve that. But there's a difference when you provide something and then the market needs it. When the market needs it, you are gonna pay for whatever you produce. But the market is not ready to accept your advanced stuff, then you still, like, you're basically producing stuff to just stuff your inventory but not selling it. Do you mind explaining a bit more the IR's response about 150 million? Is Meta planning to offer more shares? So what happens is so back then when it's still Torch, right? They offer 250. They do a 250 million shares in total. Let me take my pen out. Let me show you this. Why I said it's very, like, one of the reasons I sell is because the IR respond. It doesn't seem like the IR guy's supposed to know finance and understand finance. It's here's what it is, okay? So you have 250 million offerings. This is dollar offerings, right? It's because it's at the market. So in order to figure out your share dilution, you have to divide that by the current market share, the current market price. So among that 250 million, there's already 100 million confirmed that they sold it. They sold around $8.52 back, when Torch was like super high, right? So then that will convert to about 13 million shares, I believe. I think I have all math in my notebook. Okay, so what the IR trying to tell you that, so in a leftover 150 million offering, they split it. They say 40 million was sold on the market before June 25th. And then they park another 110 million in the ATM facility. But the irony here is, because there are 110 million parked in the ATM facility, that means whenever they decided to sell that 110 million, the market's gonna react again. But the irony is here, on June 21st and June 16th, the market has already reacted to the 100 million dollar offering at this day, and additional of $150 million offering on this day. So that means by the time when they decided to either take the 110 million out of the facility, going back to to park it where they want, right, on their balance sheet or whatever, or buy back these shares, which is impossible because they don't have enough money to do that, then this amount of shares is gonna double dilute that market price in the future. So you're literally just in there to be cut, like that $110 million worth of shares. Like, you're gonna face that dilution again because that dilution already happened on the 21st. Does that make sense? And according to my math, it's literally impossible they only sold 40 million. As I said in that video, they need to at least sell about $50 million of shares in order to get 150 on the balance sheet, $147 million in cash. So that means if you have to sell 50 million of that 150 million follow-up, that means you literally sell more than that. But they're just math. I'm gonna post on Patreon because I don't want to get in more trouble, and people just and there's no way for us to really investigate of what really happened, because we can only take what Ira said as it is, right? And you have to wait until November to figure out how much exactly offering they actually did. And if by November, like they said, oh, we actually did 100 million and there's only 50 million left over, then it becomes a legal case, right? And not only become a legal case, it also becomes it's just really hard for them to explain. And even if they only said it's 40 million offered, but then the math doesn't add up, then that means there's just something wrong with all the math component of it. I'll post the detailed math on Patreon, and for those of you who are interested or curious enough to like go over the math with me or whatever. And from my math, I also found out that Torch, like from the date of the merger on 25th to like the official date of merger. So George said the official closing date of merger is 25th. Wrong. The official closing date for the merger is actually 29th, according to new amended AK on the SEC website, right? So then when I go back and look at the outstanding share, I found that Torch has literally like there's like 10 million shares just in the limbo. At least 10 million shares out of the limbo. I'm pretty sure it's not George's fault. It's some book stuff was Torch. It just doesn't add up. The math just doesn't add up. And things, nobody believes me, right? Nobody believes me. Everybody hates us. So we just decided, it's not worth it for our effort to like keep investigating this, because there's no way we would know. We can involve SEC on this, right? But then when we involve SEC on this, then we have to tell you guys that we did that. And when we did that, that just everybody is gonna hate us even more. So no. And I always tell you that it's actually worse to lose 100 million and don't tell the SEC, because when you tell the SEC, all right, people go to jail, and then this company will basically be under new management. And I'm pretty sure some PE, private equity group, will come in and buy this company, and the shareholders will get paid. Or they decided to keep the listing and just employ a new CEO. Then you'll have a better management team, and eventually, with whatever they have, they can reach the $30 market and maybe $50 market in year 6, right? But right now, you just have a very stagnant management team. It doesn't really work. And then it's really worse, like it's really bad when you just hide the 100 million somewhere, right? If you just hide the 100 million, like if it's actually gone, it's just bad. But again, hey, we're not financial advisors. We do not get financial advisors. And again, we're just like, according to Reddit, we're just two dumbasses who don't know what we're talking about. And yeah, we're just not gonna, in public, we're not gonna talk about, this kind of stuff anymore. But hey, if you're curious, we're gonna post our math and our, new update about the what's so-called 100 million goose chase on Patreon, if you're curious. But yeah, that's about it, because we don't really want to get into further trouble. We don't want to before like anything happens, go hire a lawyer, pay like $800 per hour. We're not gonna do that. And also, those lawyers are super expensive. And the fact that we're not even like whistleblowers, we don't work this company, we don't have actual data in hand to really confirm our mathematics findings. So it's just gonna be like, it's just dumb for us to pursue this road ahead. So we decided to pause it and still cover MMAT, because Jimmy loves MMAT. You guys love Jimmy, so Jimmy still keeps the 1/3 of my entire portfolio's holding on MMAT, and Bobby is gonna hold his 1/3, because Bobby made like $3,238 on the option trading. So basically, he's out of the hole already. And he's been doing this for a month and a half. So yeah, I don't know if he's gonna sell the share or not. I need to consult with him in my mind. But if I need more liquidity, then he might sell his 1/3. So but you guys, we're still like 1/3 of us are still with you guys. So It doesn't exist when a lot of viewers or Michaela in particular is saying, oh, we're abandoning you guys. We're not. Like we still have some skin in the game. It's just we might have a more pessimistic outlook on the price target than you guys think, and we might have information that you guys don't have to sort of evaluate the situation with how Meta's go-to-market strategy actually gonna affect where this company is going. So yeah. Is this the only environment or other stock? What do you think about CAPC? Well, yeah, we're gonna cover other stocks, but from now on, we're only gonna cover the stock that we think will have a higher potential, like Fisker, and stuff like NEO. A lot of you are asking us about like why NEO went down, right? There's a reason for why NEO went down. One is because the intensification process of what's so-called tech crackdown. It's not really tech crackdown. It's because due to the interest rate fear, right? That people are feared that the Fed is going to increase the interest rate in a very short-term period of time. So then when the Fed increases the interest rate, that means the Chinese currency liquidity is actually going to go down. There's a very, very complex mechanics in the Forex system. I don't want to, I do not want to, get into this. If you guys want that kind of video, I will make that, but I suspect only there's gonna be like 100, 200 views, but whatever, right? If you guys, someone comment on that, like, yeah, we want an interest rate video, how interest rate will affect foreign currencies and those kind of stuff, or the macro plays, I will make a video on that. And then, if that comment get, I don't know, like 20 likes or 30 likes, whatever, I will make that video. And you will understand why the Chinese government is actually really scared of US having raised interest rate. And then because when US raise interest rate, the Chinese have to raise the interest rate to match it. It's like a very complex economic process. So if that happens, that means the CCP government needs to have enough cash for that. So what they would do is, how would they generate that cash? That is, they would, internally free up that cash. So then they don't want to, use party money. So they want to use like these tech companies' money. So it's like it's a very complex political situation. But for NEO, NEO is in a really good spot right now. Like if you just buy the dip, every single dip, and just wait about 2 to 3 years, I'm pretty sure NEO is going to be profitable by the beginning of next year, or about second or third quarter next year. And then this quarter, the reason why it drops so much is not only because of inflation fear, not only because the Fed chair is, well, J Money is just, a party pooper, but the tapering top and everything, but also like a lot of people are suspecting that NEO was gonna turn to profit this quarter, but they're just 0.04 like something. There's only 0.04 per share. So let's just see. NEO outstanding share. So let's do the math right here, right? We can do the math right here. 1.64 times 0.04 equals to this. So that's times billion, right? So billion is this much, right? Yeah, I think the billion is this much. So they're only 65 million away from making a profit. And I'm pretty sure with the enhanced governmental contract, they're gonna make it. NEO's gonna make it. NEO is gonna eventually gonna turn to profit next year, I think. And I'm pretty bullish on that one. On what is it? Tesla? Oh, come on, dude. It's just gonna be delayed. This is so dumb. Yeah, it's just, yeah, everybody's just waiting now. I'm selling tomorrow. No, dude, don't. CAPC, and don't make rash decisions. Every position you enter or exit, you will have a reason, right? That's why, on Discord, people are just panicking. People are saying like you're either dumb or just emotional. No, you should never make emotional investment decisions. I just think it would be way beneficial for me to have a clearer mind and sort of liquidate part of the position So I will have the liquidity to, you know, bet on SQQQ. Like for example, I've already made 5% or 7.5% total with all the free app liquidity with SQQQ, with the VIX short-term, you know, call I did, because the expiration date was on Wednesday, right? And I spotted that. I was like, yeah, a lot of puts are expiring. Let's just pump up the calls, right? I did that and made about like 7.5% on the day. Get out and you know, we can make more plays that way. Jimmy is FUD? No, dude. Jimmy is not FUD, dude. Jimmy is what you guys love. What's up, Cap? I feel like there are so many things aren't just transparent. Yeah, Ben, there are so many things that are not transparent with Meta. And also, like, they're not completely honest with how the road-to-road production works. They bought a semiconductor road-to-road production patent from Intel. And there are other patents on the market that are similar. And I can list a German company. There's another German company that have similar patent processing, but they just change one process. Like, but anyways, without digging into too technical part of this, there are a lot of things they need disclosure. And if you guys want detailed people DD, I'm just not gonna put out here, because, you know, after the Richie incident in Discord, we're gonna be much more cautious about what we say in public and what we put out. So a lot of those, you know, people DD on George, you can just go see it by yourself. They're all gonna be on Patreon. They're gonna be, you know, have their own titles, like, you know, here are some information that we have that we don't want to put in public, right? Like including the semiconductor overlook for the next 6 years. We literally have like data that tells you where the sales is going, all of the forecasting, where are these money going, and then why he's not gonna be a part of these guys for the next 4 years or 4 to 6 years, right? And then 5G rollout, and we found new competitors that's operating in Meta's vertical. And then by doing more detailed people DD into meta materials, we realized that, you know, 50% of these guys, let's just put it this way, like, they're entering in a market that we don't agree they should be entering, and maybe that's the only market that they're suitable. Who knows, right? So then we decided, you know, it's better to contract than just you know, stuck there. And, you know, by the time there's gonna be another reverse split, you know, your entire holdings literally gonna be divided by how much split they decided to reverse, right? And as I predicted before, I don't care which YouTubers you follow. They look at the 13 apps, because number 2 loves Sterling, right? It's like, oh, Sterling said this, Sterling said that. But if you go actually look at 13 apps with all these things, 13 apps were filed 45 days after quarter end. And as I said before, 45 days after quarter end, that's a month of trading days ahead. And a lot of them already liquidated their position way before I do. And I think I will just late to the party in terms of like cutting losses. BlackRock's hedging fund cut their arms. Vanguard cut 33 of their entire holding on this with a 63% loss. And you have other things, and yeah, and also like probably this stock probably not gonna get like a lot of, you know, big funds attention from now until it reaches $4.8. Because, you know, there's not going to be like a lot of liquidity there, and there are not going to be a lot of shorts there either, because there's not that much money to make to shorting this anymore if you're shorts. So yeah, nobody loves Jimmy, and he has managed through his beast to play Hansel and Gretel and follow the crumbs. There you go, Ling Ling Ling. There you go. Why is AI they always delayed? Well, let me pop all this chat real quick. What is everybody saying on Discord? Was elected to announce we will be getting our semiconductors from... No, Tesla's getting their semiconductor from Samsung. The FDS, all of the FDS system is on, they source it from Asia. So yeah, hard to break it to you guys, but So the reason why the shorts haven't covered is because the stock price is low enough for them to be comfortable to stay in there, right? And also, second reason is the dividend actually tied up a portion of the Torch shorts because they have to spit out the dividend payment on. But hey, like as I said before, and as I made other video before, dividend is not gonna be as high as what George says, right? But a lot of you guys like it's gonna be $20, guys. Yeah, it's going to the moon, guys. So yeah, you might as well just hold it, right? So let's see what happens. But hey, I'm not especially very optimistic about the dividend payment. I honestly think what really is gonna happen is by the end of year end they didn't sell their asset and then people just they're gonna do a spin-off or whatever. And I don't know if George is gonna actually pay the shareholder for the dividend with a prorated amount or whatever. But I mean, at this point, I'm just very impartial and very objective at this part. Jimmy will tell you that it's going to the moon, but I won't tell you that. I'm just gonna tell you, like, based on our data and based on our analysis, that you probably will see less than $1 payment for your dividends anyways. It might even be like just a couple of cents, really depending on what they do. And there's no way John Breda is gonna willing to sell, or Greg Maccabee is willing to sell that land for just a portion of $1 or whatever. So you have like sort of like a conflict of interest there, because Torch might not be willing to sell that asset. They really want to do a spin-off, then there's conflict of interest there. Hey, I'm good. How about you? How would a person who has never done any option trading should start? Don't. You should do at least 3 months of option trading on paper, and then we're gonna post a bunch of option tutorials. Follow that. Maybe sometimes I'm gonna use real life examples, and find something that that's stable. Find any stock that's stable for you and use that to trade options. You just basically trade flat, right? You want to have like don't go for the 10%, 20% weekly or monthly option plays that like what I like to do, because I like high risk and return. Go for the 5%, 3%, 2% per month sort of thing, and sort of pick something with the data that with a delta that you like, and we're gonna cover all the Greeks, right? And then sort of hedge everything with your Vega value, which is pegged to your portfolio. Hey, what is up, Seraphine? I never figured out if you're a guy or a girl. We just assume you're a girl. We're good. There's nothing much new. We're just waiting for the AI day, and my prediction is there's not gonna be any George mentions in AI day, and they're gonna talk about how they're gonna perfect their software system to really combat the regulators, and the regulatory risk is huge right now for autonomous cars, because literally people are figuring out how, like, the Congress is trying to figure out how to regulate Bitcoin and how to regulate high tech. But Congress people are old, so they probably don't understand what they're doing, but they're trying. Oh. Or is it just me, or just Elon still playing Cyberpunk? Let's go. Oh, and for those of you who are curious, Patreon's already up. It's gonna be linked in the description in all our new videos. Oh, guy, Filipino guy. Hey, okay, yeah. So yeah. If you wanna learn detailed stuff about a lot of trading philosophy, like the fundamentals that we follow, then Patreon is where you go. But on YouTube I will still do daily MMAT price prediction or whatever, but it's just gonna be less in depth. And we're gonna more leaning towards covering more portion of our efforts into Fisker, into EV, into lithium, into other high-tech stuff, maybe into private companies too, also like other stuff that we like, right? Also like anything that will make money, sort of, GEO, like the private prison system. You just have other stuff like innovative drugs that we think might actually go to market. Or for those of you who are curious, like what else did I do with my freed up liquidity after I cut my loss? I also bought in some Moderna, because I did a regression line on COVID. I think the peak's gonna be around October, and after October it's gonna just draw down. But from right now on to October, it feels like the government's gonna sort of announce the booster shot announcement, whatever, and it's gonna be a huge boost for Moderna. And Moderna is slowly eating away Pfizer's market share in Europe. So I see a pretty multi-billion-dollar booster shot market for Moderna. And if you count that in, then about $400 is not that much for Moderna, and it might just keep going too. So yeah, you should have merchandise to sell. Now we don't have enough subscribers yet, and I'm pretty sure about 15% of our subs right now are like kind of iffy with like what kind of channel we are, because they're like super bullish on MMAT, but right now we're standing on a very neutral ground right now. We're not bullish or bearish, because if you're bearish, you're short, and there's not much profit you can make from shorting it anymore, unless there's gonna be another RS, or unless there's gonna be emergency board meeting that we're just gonna call in the next 2 or 3 months. And again, like put you guys in for a secret or something that you guys didn't really pay attention to on my videos is, if you go look at the option chain, like figure out what is missing here. Like what is missing? What is missing? October, September, August, September, October, August, September, October, January. What's missing, right? What's missing? Figure out what's missing and follow the breadcrumbs. And yeah. Oh, thank you, dude. Thank you. Alright, this AI day is taking forever. I might as well just go take a nap. AI day was supposed to start at 5 p.m. What time will it actually start? Good question, guys. Good question. Usually he is about half an hour late, so I guess we'll just wait. And also, let me actually text my friend who works at Tesla. I can't find my phone, never mind. But yeah. Hey, thank you. Hey, I love Long Island in New York. I'm pretty sure. Wait, didn't they sell the Gatsby mansion already? I think they did. I was on. I worked for the I interned for the United Nations for one summer when I was a freshman here in college, and yeah, I go to Long Island a lot. Have some friends there. Hey, what's up, Matthew? When was the last time you've been in Asia, China for that matter? A couple of years back, I think. Haven't gone back for a long time now. Yeah. Link of Tesla to Meta is growing stronger, both in alternative realities where time has no bearing. Funny.
I'm not the man you want. You've made a mistake. I'm in touch with technological advances pretty well everywhere.
Dude, imagine you're driving a Tesla and just run straight into a truck. I was gonna study machine learning for masters, but now just doing finance, I guess. But yeah, this is like literally right up my alley. I understand the very scary part of why it takes so long to do data labeling, but yeah, it's not gonna be ready. Full autonomous cars is literally not gonna be ready. The labeling, the data compressing, the data feeding with deep learning, it's not gonna be there. Especially with like all variables accounted on the road, it's not gonna be there in at least the next 5 years. Come on, guys, we just want to hear Elon say stuff and we're done, dude. Or like smoke a joint on stream with Elon or something random shit like that, you know. And then now I just... Are you eyeing on anything from this Tesla presentation? Yes, I want to hear what Elon says about his future outlook, because earlier in 2018, oh, hot chicks, let's see, on the road, let's go. No way, that's in Palo Alto. Yeah, that's actually, they're driving Palo Alto. So he said before that, you know, by 2020 there's gonna be like self-driving taxis, right? And usually he's way too bullish on certain things, and people get like super hyped up. And I just want to see where he's leading the crowd towards. He might talk something about Bitcoin. I'm not really sure. If he does, then I want to see his tone, because I already know his average for his Bitcoin holding, and he's giving away his Bitcoin holding. So that says something, right? But yeah. So I'm eyeing for the new Cybertruck announcement, and I'm trying to figure out their chip manufacturing situation, and their new coding. They literally recoded their software to sort of be compatible with the new chip shortage situation. So that will be good. And they're probably gonna talk more about future the robotic side in their business, which I think is fairly interesting. So I'm eyeing for that in the Tesla presentation. And plus, I just love Elon as a person. You know, back in 2017, when they're not really making money, I said, you know, I'm not gonna, you know, see this company going anywhere until like late 2019. I was like, oh, it's slowly making profit, everything's going better. And hey, you know, because, you know, Elon and I are both nerds, and we see things differently than other people, so I guess I will like him. But does it mean that I will be like a, you know, a loyal fan of Tesla? Probably not. Like, I'm half a fan. I'm half a fan and half a critic for Tesla. Yeah, that's about it. But why is it taking so long, dude? Just too much time. Well, if he does, we're probably all going to make fun of him for a while. Talking about Richie in Discord. That's actually a really good question. Oh, it's gonna take forever. He's usually half an hour late. Yep, as expected. 37, the 37 puts started printing. That's good. That's so funny. Yeah, AMC's yeah. If you look at AMC's this has been going on forever. Like, you know, when they started selling stuff, and ownership disclosure. Oh, come on. Oh, come on. Oh, come on. Ooh. Ooh. Dumping shares. Let's go, boys. Report a transaction. Oh, he still have some shares. He's just slowly dumping shares. And as usual, like, these guys slowly dump shares and they slowly buy them back. Like, they're just playing with the flow. And as I talked to you guys before, AMC's retail flow is around 80%. When it reaches 90, like, institution just be out. And just literally, like, you're literally just pressing like the least bit of vitality of this stock. It's a beating horse. It's like a dead horse right now. And because the economic environment, and the dumbest thing I've ever heard is Dreamer talk about, oh my god, the market's gonna crash and AMC's gonna squeeze. That's just so dumb. Think about it. Like, if market crash, will you be inclined to take out your shares, or are you actually gonna put it to park it in AMC? You'd probably be better just, you know, park it in Apple. Hey, what's up, Nate? Everything's well. How about you? Great. Do you think Elon will bring up MMAT or George? There's no way, dude. Dude, there's no way. Elon will probably do business with Key Meta because of the satellite antenna. And what George have, there might be another private company that can provide better solutions. What you're really betting on for MMT from now on is you want to see the result of the roll-to-roll production and how much can they really decrease their cost to. Because when George was phrasing they can do it to a single digit, they didn't account for a land and the use and other costs within that cost, because it's still too much money to produce. And even if they can produce efficiently with moderately affordable price, that still means that they need to find a buyer that's willing to use them and willing to integrate that into a system. And if they can't, then hey, it's GG. You just produced a product that no one want to buy, and then you just wasted about $50 million plus $78 million acquiring a company that give you the production facility and procedures, right? This is something that a lot of people don't want to talk about, and a lot of CEOs are essentially delusional. That's why there are 3,000 companies listing on NASDAQ, and there's only about 50% that's profitable. We should just bet on him saying meta materials. Oh yeah, take wages. Wait, can I do this? I don't think I can do it on stream. No, I don't think I can do this on stream. We cannot take wages on stream. I don't think we can. So with AMC, what do you think about the theory about the shorts haven't covered yet? So the stock have plenty of life left until the shorts cover. Also, all the naked shorts out there. Your thoughts? Well, what Matt and Trey don't tell you is, in order for MMs, who MMs are? Ooh, hot chicks! Oh, hot chicks! Never mind, I got distracted. So who MMs are market makers. In order for market makers to correctly hedge their gamma or hack, if you don't understand what hedging gamma is, it's literally hedging a risk, right? So in order for them to properly hedge risk, they have to take on naked short positions in order to hedge their option plays. Because whatever people do on the market literally countered out their naked short positions. And sometimes hedge fund does that because they're also the MMs. Never mind, Elon is coming out.
Thanks for coming. And sorry, I had some technical difficulties. Really need AI for this. So what we want to show today is that Tesla is much more than an electric car company. That we have deep AI activity in hardware, on the inference level, on the training level, and basically, I think we're arguably the leaders in real-world AI as it applies to the real world. And those of you who have seen the full self-driving beta,
wait, volume's okay. Just let me know if volume isn't okay.
Tesla neural net is learning to drive, and so this is a particular application of AI, but I think there are more applications down the road that will make sense, and we'll talk about that later in the presentation. But yeah, we basically want to encourage anyone who is interested in solving real-world AI problems at either the hardware or the software level to join Tesla, or consider joining Tesla. So let's see, we'll start off with Andre. Yep. Great.
I think never mind. Okay, hi everyone. Is my mic on? I hope so.
If not, I'll give you mine.
Okay, great. It doesn't sound like it? Okay, hello. Great. Okay, hi everyone. Welcome. My name is Andre, and I lead the vision team here at Tesla Autopilot, and I'm incredibly excited to be here to kick off this section, giving you a technical deep dive into the Autopilot stack and showing you all the under-the-hood components that go into making the car drive all by itself. So we're going to start off with the vision component here. Now, in the vision component, what we're trying to do is we're trying to design a neural network that processes the raw information, which in our case is the 8 cameras that are positioned around the vehicle. And they send us images, and we need to process that in real time into what we call the vector space. And this is a 3-dimensional representation of everything you need for driving. So this is the 3-dimensional positions of lines, edges, curbs, traffic signs, traffic lights, cars, their positions, orientations, depths, velocities, and so on. So here I'm showing a video of, actually, hold on. Apologies. So here I'm showing the video of the raw inputs that come into the stack, and then neural network processes that into the vector space. And you are seeing parts of that vector space rendered in the instrument cluster on the car. Now, what I find kind of fascinating about this is that we are effectively building a synthetic animal from the ground up. So the car can be thought of as an animal. It moves around, it senses the environment, and acts autonomously and intelligently. And we are building all the components from scratch in-house. So we are building, of course, all the mechanical components of the body, the nervous system, which is all the electrical components, and for our purposes, the brain of the autopilot. And specifically for this section, the synthetic visual cortex. Now, the biological visual cortex actually has quite intricate structure and a number of areas that organize the information flow of this brain. And so in particular, in your visual cortices, the information hits the, light hits the retina, goes through the LGN all the way to the back of your visual cortex, goes through areas V1, V2, V4, the IT, the ventral and the dorsal streams, and the information is organized in a certain layout. And so when we are designing the visual cortex of the car, we also want to design the neural network architecture of how the information flows in the system. So the processing starts in the beginning when light hits our artificial retina, and we are going to process this information with neural networks. Now I'm going to roughly organize this section chronologically. So starting off with some of the neural networks and what they look like roughly 4 years ago when I joined the team, and how they have developed over time. So roughly 4 years ago, the car was mostly driving in a single lane, going forward on the highway, and so it had to keep lane and it had to keep distance away from the car in front of us. And at that time, all of processing was only on individual image level. So a single image has to be analyzed by a neural net and make little pieces of the vector space, process that into little pieces of the vector space. So this processing took the following shape. We take 1280 by 960 input, and this is 12-bit integers streaming in at roughly 36 hertz. Now we're going to process that with a neural network. So we instantiate a feature extractor backbone. In this case, we use residual neural networks. So we have a stem and a number of residual blocks connected in series. Now the specific class of ResNets that we use are RegNets, because RegNets offer a very nice design space for neural networks because they allow you to very nicely trade off latency and accuracy. Now these RegNets give us as an output a number of features at different resolutions and different scales. So in particular, on the very bottom of this feature hierarchy, we have very high resolution information with very low channel counts, and all the way at the top, we have low resolution spatially, but high channel counts. So on the bottom, we have a lot of neurons that are really scrutinizing the detail of the image, and on the top, we have neurons that can see most of the image and have a lot of that context, have a lot of that scene context. We then like to process this with feature pyramid networks. In our case, we like to use BiFDNs, and they get to multiple scales to talk to each other effectively and share a lot of information. So for example, if you're a neuron all the way down in the network and you're looking at a small patch and you're not sure if this is a car or not, it definitely helps to know from the top layers that, hey, you are actually in the vanishing point of this highway. And so that helps to disambiguate that this is probably a car. After a BiFDN and a feature fusion across scales, we then go into task-specific heads. So for example, if you are doing object detection, we have a one-stage YOLO-like object detector here where we initialize a raster, and there's a binary bit per position telling whether or not there's a car there. And then in addition to that, if there is, here's a bunch of other attributes you might be interested in. So the XY with height offset, or any of the other attributes, like what type of a car is this, and so on. So this is for the detection by itself. Now, very quickly we discovered that we don't just want to detect cars, we want to do a large number of tasks. So, for example, we want to do traffic light recognition and detection, a lane prediction, and so on. So very quickly we converge from this kind of an architectural layout where there's a common shared backbone, and then it branches off into a number of heads. So we call these, therefore, hydronets, and these are the heads of the hydra. Now, this architectural layout has a number of benefits. So number one, because of the feature sharing, we can amortize the forward pass inference in the car at test time. And so this is very efficient to run. Because if we had to have a backbone for every single task, that would be a lot of backbones in the car. Number two, this decouples all of the tasks, so we can individually work on every one task in isolation. And for example, we can uprev any of the data sets or change some of the architecture of the head and so on, and you are not impacting any of the other tasks. And so we don't have to revalidate all the other tasks, which can be expensive. And number three, because there's this bottleneck here in features, what we do fairly often is that we actually cache these features to disk, and when we are doing these fine-tuning workflows, we only fine-tune from the cached features up and only fine-tune the heads. So most often in terms of our training workflows, we will do an end-to-end training run once in a while where we train everything jointly, then we cache the features at the multi-scale feature level, and then we fine-tune off of that for a while, and then end-to-end training once again, and so on. So here's the kinds of predictions that we were obtaining, I would say several years ago now, from one of these HydroNets. So again, we are processing individual images. There we go. We are processing just individual image, and we're making a large number of predictions about these images. So for example, here you can see predictions of the stop signs, the stop lines, the lines, the edges, the cars, the traffic lights, the curbs here, whether or not the car is parked, all of the static objects like trash cans, cones, and so on, and everything here is coming out of the net, here in this case, out of the HydroNet. So that was all fine and great, but as we worked towards FSD, we quickly found that this is not enough. So where this first started to break was when we started to work on Smart Summing. Here I am showing some of the predictions of only the curb detection tasks, and I'm showing it now for every one of the cameras. So we'd like to wind our way around the parking lot to find the person who is summoning the car. Now the problem is that you can't just directly drive on image space predictions. You actually need to cast them out and form some kind of a vector space around you.
Vector space.
So we attempted to do this using C++ and developed what we call the occupancy tracker at the time.
But that doesn't work because it takes too long.
You see that the curb
Programming
detections
costs
of the
too
images
high.
are being stitched up across camera scenes, camera boundaries, and over time. Now there are two major problems I would say with this setup. Number one, we very quickly discovered that tuning the occupancy tracker and all of its hyperparameters was extremely complicated. You don't want to do this explicitly by hand in C++. You want this to be inside a neural network and train that end to end. Number two, we very quickly discovered that the image space is not the correct output space. You don't want to make predictions in image space, you really want to make it directly in the vector space. So here's a way of illustrating the issue. So here I'm showing on the first row the predictions of our curbs and our lines in red and blue. And they look great in the image, but once you cast them out into the vector space, things start to look really terrible, and we are not going to be able to drive on this. So you see how the predictions are quite bad in vector space. And the reason for this fundamentally is because you need to have an extremely accurate depth per pixel in order to actually do this projection. And so you can imagine just how high of a bar it is to predict that depth so accurately in these tiny, in every single pixel of the image. And also if there's any occluded area where you'd like to make predictions, you will not be able to because it's not an image space concept in that case. So we very quickly the other problems with this, by the way, is also for object detection. If you are only making predictions per camera, then sometimes you will encounter cases like this where a single car actually spans 5 of the 8 cameras. And so if you are making individual predictions, then no single camera sees all of the car. And so obviously you're not going to be able to do
and then now they can just map them together, right?
And it's going to be incredibly difficult to fuse these measurements.
But that
So we have this
also
intuition
have
that
problems.
what we'd like to do instead is we'd like to take all of the images and simultaneously feed them into a single neural net and directly output
There you go.
in vector
Caught it.
space. Now this is very easily said, much more difficult to
It's
actually
very hard to
achieve.
accomplish.
But roughly, we want to lay out a neural net in this way, where we process every single image.
They have to
with a vector,
restructure.
and then we want to somehow fuse them, and we want to re-represent it, the features from image space features to directly some kind of a vector space features, and then go into the decoding of the head.
Yeah, that's why you use a LiDAR. It makes things
So
way easier.
there are two problems with this. Problem number one, how do you actually create the neural network components that do this transformation? And you have to make it differentiable so that end-to-end training is possible. And number two, if you want vector space predictions from your neural net, you need vector space data sets. So just labeling images and so on is not going to get you there. You need vector space labels.
It's going to
We're
take
going to talk a
decades.
lot more about problem number two later in the talk. For now, I want to focus on the neural network architecture, so I'm going to deep dive into problem number one. So here's the rough problem, right? We're trying to have this bird's eye view prediction instead of image space predictions. So for example, let's focus on a single pixel in the output space in yellow. And this pixel is trying to decide, am I part of a curb or not, as an example. And now, where should the support for this kind of a prediction come from in the image space? Well, we know roughly how the cameras are positioned and their extrinsics and intrinsics, so we can roughly project this point into the camera images, and the evidence for whether or not this has occurred may come from somewhere here in the images. The problem is that this projection is really hard to actually get correct because it is a function of the road surface. The road surface could be sloping up or sloping down, or also there could be other data-dependent issues. For example, there could be occlusion due to a car. So if there's a car
also motion also
this
change
viewport, this part of the image, then actually you may want to pay attention to a different part of the image, not the part where it projects. And so because this is data dependent, it's really hard to have a fixed transformation for this component. So in order to solve this issue, we use a transformer to represent this space. And this transformer, it uses multi-headed self-attention and blocks of it. In this case, actually, we can get away with even a single block doing a lot of this work. And effectively what this does is you initialize a raster of the size of the output space that you would like, and you tile it with positional encodings, with signs and curses in the output space. And then these get encoded with an MLP into a set of query vectors. And then all of the images and their features also emit their own keys and values, and then the query's keys and values feed into the multi-headed self-attention. And so effectively what's happening is that every single image piece is broadcasting in its key what is it a part of. So hey, I'm a part of a pillar in roughly this location, and I'm seeing this kind of stuff, and that's in the key. And then every query is something along the lines of, hey, I'm a pixel in the output space at this position, and I'm looking for features of this type. Then the keys and the queries interact multiplicatively, and then the values get pooled accordingly. And so this re-represents the space, and we found this to be very effective for this transformation.
Rematching patterns.
If you do all of the engineering correctly, this again is very easily said, difficult to do. You do all of the engineering correctly. There's one more problem actually before. I'm not sure why I put stuff at the slides. So one more thing, you have to be careful with some of the details here when you are trying to get this.
There you go. Oh, this is what I'm talking about. The camera limitation.
Slightly cockeyed in a slightly different way.
This is why you need LiDAR.
From image space to the output space, you really need to know what your camera
is it even worth it?
And you need to feed that in somehow into the neural net. And so you could definitely just like concatenate the camera calibrations of all of the images and somehow feed them in with an NLP. But actually we found that we can do much better by transforming all of the images into a synthetic virtual camera using a special rectification transform. So this is what that would look like. We insert a new layer right above the image, rectification layer. It's a function of camera calibration, and it translates all of the images into a virtual common camera. So if you were to average up a lot of repeater images, for example, which face to the back, you would, without doing this, you would get a kind of a blur. But after doing the rectification transformation, you see that the back mirror gets really crisp. So once you do this, this improves the performance quite a bit. So here are some of the results. So on the left, we are seeing what we had before, and on the right, we're now seeing significantly improved predictions coming directly out of the neural net. This is a multi-camera network predicting directly in vector space, and you can see that it's basically night and day. You can actually drive on this. And this took some time and some engineering and incredible work from the AI team to actually get this to work and deploy and make it efficient in the car. This also improved a lot of our object detection. So for example, here in this video, I'm showing single camera predictions in orange and multi-camera predictions in blue. And basically, if you can't predict these cars if you are only seeing a tiny sliver of a car. So your detections are not going to be very good, and their positions are not going to be good. But a multi-camera network does not have an issue. Here's another video from a more nominal sort of situation, and we see that as these cars in this tight space cross camera boundaries, there's a lot of jank that enters into the predictions, and basically the whole setup just doesn't make sense, especially for very large vehicles. Like
and it won't work on a highway. It just doesn't.
Significantly less.
Because collision speed is faster than cameras.
Okay, so at this point, we have multi-camera networks that are giving predictions directly in vector space.
Oh, this is bad.
Every single instant in time, completely independently. So very quickly we discovered that there's a large number of predictions we want to make that actually require the video context, and we need to.
This is where 5G comes in. But when 5G comes in, is the risk really outweighs the rewards?
Is it still there, even though it's temporarily occluded? Or for example, if I'm trying to predict the road geometry ahead, it's very helpful to know if the signs or the road markings that I saw 15 years ago. So we try to develop. We try to insert video modules into our neural network architecture, and this is kind of one of the solutions that we've converged on. So we have the multi-scale features, as we had them from before, And what we are going to now insert is a feature queue module that is going to cache some of these features over time, and then a video module that is going to fuse this information temporally. And then we're going to continue into the heads that do the decoding. Now, I'm going to go into both of these blocks one by one. Also, in addition, notice here that we are also feeding in the kinematics. This is basically the velocity and the acceleration that's telling us about how the car is moving. So not only are we going to keep track of what we're seeing from all the cameras, but also how the car has traveled. So here's the feature queue and the rough layout of it. We are basically concatenating these features over time and the kinematics of how the car has moved and the positional encodings, and that's being concatenated, encoded, and stored in a feature queue. And that's going to be consumed by a video module. Now, there's a few details here, again, to get right. So in particular, with respect to the pop and push mechanisms, and when do you push, and how, and especially when do you push, basically. So here's a cartoon diagram illustrating some of the challenges here. There's going to be the ego car is coming from the bottom and coming up to this intersection here, and then traffic is going to start crossing in front of us, and it's going to temporarily start occluding some of the cars ahead. And then we're going to be stuck at this intersection for a while and just waiting our turn. This is something that happens all the time and is a cartoon representation of some of the challenges here. So number one, with respect to the feature queue and when we want to push into a queue, obviously we'd like to have some kind of a time-based queue where, for example, we enter the features into the queue, say, every 27 milliseconds. And so if a car gets temporarily occluded, then the neural network now has the power to look and reference the memory in time and learn the association that, hey, even though this thing looks occluded right now, there's a record of it in my previous features, and I can use this to still make a detection. So that's kind of like the more obvious one, but the one that we also discovered is necessary in our case is, for example, suppose you're trying to make predictions about the road surface and the road geometry ahead, and you're trying to predict that I'm in a turning lane and the lane next to us is going straight. Then it's really necessary to know about the line markings and the signs, and sometimes they occur a long time ago. And so if you only have a time-based queue, you may forget the features while you're waiting at your red light. So in addition to a time-based queue, we also have a space-based queue. So we push every time the car travels a certain fixed distance. So some of these details actually can matter quite a bit. And so in this case, we have a time-based queue and a space-based queue to cache our features, and that continues into the video module. Now, for the video module, we looked at a number of possibilities of how to fuse this information temporally. So we looked at three-dimensional convolutions, transformers, axial transformers in an effort to try to make them more efficient, recurrent neural networks of a large number of flavors. But the one that we actually like quite a bit as well, and I want to spend some time on, is a spatial recurrent neural network video module. And so what we're doing here is, because of the structure of the problem, we're driving on two-dimensional surfaces, we can actually organize the hidden state into a two-dimensional lattice. And then as the car is driving around, we update only the parts that are near the car and where the car has visibility. So as the car is driving around, we are using the kinematics to integrate the position of the car in the hidden features grid. And we are only updating the RNN at the points where we have that are nearby us, sort of. So here's an example of what that looks like. Here, what I'm going to show you is the car driving around, and we're looking at the hidden state of this RNN. And these are different channels in the hidden state. So you can see that this is after optimization and training this neural net. You can see that some of the channels are keeping track of different aspects of the road. Like, for example, the centers of the road, the edges, the lines, the road surface, and so on. Here's another cool video of this. So this is looking at the mean of the first 10 channels in the hidden state for different traversals of different intersections. And all I want you to see basically is that there's cool activity as the recurrent neural network is keeping track of what's happening at any point in time. And you can imagine that we've now given the power to the neural network to actually selectively read and write to this memory. So for example, if there's a car right next to us and is occluding some parts of the road, then now the network has the ability to not write to those locations. But when the car goes away and we have a really good view, then the recurrent neural net can say, okay, we have very clear visibility. We definitely want to write information about what's in that part of space. Here's a few predictions that show what this looks like. So here we are making predictions about the road boundaries in red, intersection areas in blue, road centers, and so on. So we're only showing a few of the predictions here just to keep the visualization clean. And yeah, this is done by the spatial RNN. And this is only showing a single clip, a single traversal, but you can imagine there could be multiple trips through here. And basically, a number of cars, a number of clips could be collaborating to build this map, basically and effectively an HD map, except it's not in a space of explicit items. It's in a space of features of a recurrent neural network, which is kind of cool. I haven't seen that before. The video networks also improved our object detection quite a bit. So in this example, I want to show you a case where there are two cars over there, and one car is going to drive by and occlude them briefly. So look at what's happening with the single frame and the video predictions as the cars pass in front of us. Yeah, so that makes a lot of sense. So a quick playthrough through what's happening. When both of them are in view, the predictions are roughly equivalent. And you are seeing multiple orange boxes because they're coming from different cameras. When they are occluded, the single frame networks drop the detection, but the video module remembers it, and we can persist the cars. And then when they are only partially occluded, the single frame network is forced to make its best guess about what it's seeing, and it's forced to make a prediction, and it makes a really terrible prediction. But the video module knows that there's only a partial, it has the information, and knows that this is not a very easily visible part right now and doesn't actually take that into account. We also saw significant improvements in our ability to estimate depth and, of course, especially velocity. So here I'm showing a clip from our remove the radar push where we are seeing the radar depth and velocity in green, and we were trying to match or even surpass, of course, the signal just from video networks alone. And what you're seeing here is in orange, we are seeing a single frame performance. And in blue, we are seeing, again, video modules. And so you see that the quality of depth is much higher. And for velocity, the orange signal, of course, you can't get velocity out of a single frame network. So we just differentiate depth to get that. But the video module actually is basically right on top of the radar signal. And so we found that this worked extremely well for us. So here's putting everything together. This is what our architecture roughly looks like today. So we have raw images feeding on the bottom. They go through a rectification layer to correct for camera calibration and put everything into a common virtual camera. We pass them through RegNets, residual networks, to process them into a number of features at different scales. We fuse the multi-scale information with BiFBN. This goes through a transformer module to re-represent it into the vector space in the output space. This feeds into a feature queue in time or space that gets processed by a video module like the spatial RNN, and then continues into the branching structure of the HydraNet with trunks and heads for all the different tasks. And so that's the architecture roughly what it looks like today. And on the right, you are seeing some of its predictions sort of visualized both in a top-down vector space and also in images. So definitely, this architecture has definitely complexified from just a very simple image-based single network about 3 or 4 years ago and continues to evolve. It's definitely quite impressive now. There's still opportunities for improvements that the team is actively working on. For example, you'll notice that our fusion of time and space is fairly late in neural network terms. So maybe we can actually do earlier fusion of space or time and do, for example, cost volumes or optical flow-like networks on the bottom. Or for example, our outputs are dense rasters, and it's actually pretty expensive to post-process some of these dense rasters in the car. And of course, we are under very strict latency requirements, so this is not ideal. We actually are looking into all kinds of ways of predicting just the sparse structure of the road, maybe like point by point, or in some other fashion that doesn't require expensive post-processing. But this basically is how you achieve a very nice vector space. And now I believe Ashok is going to talk about how we can run, play, and control on top of it.
Thank you, Andre. Hi, everyone. My name is Ashok. I lead the planning and controls, auto labeling, and simulation teams. So, like Andre mentioned, the vision networks take dense video data and then compress it down into a 3D vector space. The role of the planner now is to consume this vector space and get the car to the destination while maximizing the safety, comfort, and the efficiency of the car. Even back in 2019, our planner was pretty capable driver. It was able to stay in the lanes, make lane changes as necessary, and take exits of the highway. But city driving is much more complicated. Rarely there are structured lane lines. Vehicles do much more free-form driving. Then the car has to respond to all of cut-ins and crossing vehicles and pedestrians doing funny things. What is the key problem in planning? Number one, the action space is very non-convex. And number two, it is high-dimensional. What I mean by non-convex is There can be multiple possible solutions that can be independently good, but getting a globally consistent solution is pretty tricky. So there can be pockets of local minima that the planning can get stuck into. And secondly, the high dimensionality comes because the car needs to plan for the next 10 to 15 seconds. It needs to produce the position, velocities, and acceleration over this entire window. This is a lot of parameters to produce at runtime. Discrete search methods are really great at solving non-convex problems because they are discrete, they don't get stuck in local minima, whereas continuous function optimization can easily get stuck in local minima and produce poor solutions that are not great. On the other hand, for high-dimensional problems, discrete search sucks because it is discrete, it does not use any graded information, so literally it has to go and export each point to know how good it is. Whereas continuous optimization uses gradient-based methods to very quickly go to a good solution. Our solution to this entire problem is to break it down hierarchically. First, use a code search method to crunch down the non-convexity and come up with a convex corridor, and then use continuous optimization techniques to make the final smooth trajectory. Let's see an example of how the search operates. So here, we're trying to do a lane change. In this case, the car needs to do 2 back-to-back lane changes to make the left turn up ahead. For this, the car searches over different maneuvers. So in the first one it searches is lane change that's close by, but the car brakes pretty harshly, so it's pretty uncomfortable. The next maneuver it tries does the lane change bit late, so it speeds up, goes behind the other car, goes in front of the other cars, and finally does the lane change. But now it risks missing the left turn. We do thousands of such searches in a very short time span. Because these are all physics-based models, these futures are very easy to simulate, and in the end, we have a set of candidates, and we finally choose one based on the optimality conditions of safety, comfort, and easily making the turn. So now the car has chosen this path, and you can see that as the car executes this trajectory, it pretty much matches what we had planned. The cyan plot on the right side here, that one is the actual velocity of the car, and the white line underneath it was the plan. So we are able to plan for 10 seconds here and able to match that when we see in hindsight. So this is a well-made plan. When driving alongside other agents, it's important to not just plan for ourselves, but instead we have to plan for everyone jointly and optimize for the overall scene's traffic flow. In order to do this, what we do is we literally run the autopilot planner on every single relevant object in the scene. Here's an example of why that's necessary. This is an auto corridor. I'll let you watch the video for a second. Yeah, that was autopilot driving in an auto corridor, going around parked cars, cones, and poles. Here there's a 3D view of the same thing. The oncoming car arrives now, and autopilot slows down a little bit, but then realizes that we cannot yield to them because we don't have any space to our side, but the other car can yield to us instead. So instead of just blindly braking here, autopilot reasons about that car has low enough velocity that they can pull over and should yield to us because we cannot yield to them, and assertively makes progress. A second oncoming car arrives now. This vehicle has higher velocity, and like I said earlier, we literally run the autopilot planner for the other object. So in this case, we
Okay, so if you guys want me to translate, basically what he's trying to say that in order for the autopilot to run safely, you have to sort of not only predict, not only trying to predict as yourself agent, which is trying to predict how would you turn over here as yourself, you also need to predict how the other car is gonna treat you. So basically, the structural challenges for autonomous cars here, he's raising a very, very fundamental problem with autonomous cars is, so if let's just say 5G in the next, say, 7 years rollout, right? And if everybody's car is autonomous, then this issue can be, solved very easily, because you can, if you interconnect every single car, that means when cars can communicate with each other, then they can plan accordingly. But right now, they're trying to plan human error. This is why I think later on they're going to address, or they might not to, is the reason why Tesla car crash is not because Tesla software's problem, it's because they cannot account for human error. Well, it is part of their software error, but you just can't. You you cannot predict human error. You simply can't. Like, you can't like just say, if you're driving on the street of California and someone who's like high off their ass because they were doing Mary Jane before, and then the driving pattern is significantly different from everybody else, and this is how like prediction fails. This is why, you know, back in the 2008, the Chaos Fund failed, you know, when Black Swan event happens. This is the same thing. This is why machine learning will never replace mankind. It just never works, because sometimes we match the pattern, sometimes we break it.
Lateral jerk is also minimized. So in summary, we do a search for both us and everyone else in the scene. We set up a convex corridor and then optimize for a smooth path. Together, these can do some really neat things like shown above. But driving looks a bit different in other places, like where I grew up from. It's very much more unstructured, cars and pedestrians cutting each other, harsh braking, honking. It's a crazy world. We can try to scale up these methods, but it's going to be really difficult to efficiently solve this at runtime. What we instead want to do is use learning-based methods to efficiently solve them. And I want to show why this is true. So we're going to go from this complicated problem to a much simpler toy parking problem, but still illustrates the core of the issue. Here, this is a parking lot. The Ego car is in blue, and it needs to park in the green parking spot here. So it needs to go around the curbs, the parked cars, and the cones shown in orange here. So this is a simple baseline. It's a A-star, it's a standard algorithm that uses a lattice space search. And the heuristic here is a distance, the Euclidean distance to the goal. So you can see that it directly shoots towards the goal, but very quickly gets trapped in a local minima. And it backtracks from there, and then searches a different path to try to go around this parked car. Eventually, it makes progress and gets to the goal, but it ends up using 400,000 nodes for making this. Obviously, this is a terrible heuristic. We want to do better than this. So if you added a navigation route to it and has the car to follow the navigation route while being close to the goal, this is what happens. The navigation route helps immediately, but still, when it encounters cones or other obstacles, it basically does the same thing as before, backtracks and then searches a whole new path. And this poor search has no idea that these obstacles exist. It literally has to go there, check if it's in collision, and if it's in collision, back up. The navigation heuristic helped, but still this took 22,000 nodes. We can design more and more of these heuristics to help the search go faster and faster, but it's really tedious and hard to design a globally optimal heuristic. Even if you had a distance function from the cones that guided the search, this would only be effective for the single cone. But what we need is a global value function. So instead, what we want to use is neural networks to give this heuristic for us. The vision networks produce a vector space, and we have cars moving around in it. This basically looks like an Atari game, and it's a multiplayer version. So we can use techniques such as mu0, alpha0, etc., that was used to solve Go and other Atari games to solve the same problem. So we're working on neural networks that can produce state and action distributions that can then be plugged into Monte Carlo tree search with various cost functions. Some of the cost functions can be explicit cost functions like distance to like collisions, comfort, traversal time, etc. But they can also be interventions from the actual manual driving events. We trained such a network for this simple parking problem. So here again, same problem. Let's see how MCTS tree search does. So here you notice that the planner is basically able to, in one shot, make progress towards the goal. To notice that this is not even using a navigation heuristic. Just given the scene, the planner is able to go directly towards the goal. All the other offshoots you're seeing are possible options. It's not choosing any of them, just choosing the option that directly takes it towards the goal. The reason is that the neural network is able to absorb the global context of the scene and then produce a value function that effectively guides it towards the global minima as opposed to getting it stuck in any local minima. So this only takes 288 nodes and is several orders of magnitude less than what was done in the A-star with the Euclidean distance heuristic. So this is what a final architecture is going to look like. The vision system is going to crush down the dense video data into a vector space. It's going to be consumed by both an explicit planner and a neural network planner. In addition to this, the network planner can also consume intermediate features of the network. Together, these produce a trajectory distribution, and it can be optimized end-to-end, both with explicit cost functions and human intervention and other imitation data. This then goes into explicit planning function that does whatever is easy for that and produces the final steering and acceleration commands for the car. With that, we need to now explain how we train these networks. And for training these networks, we need large data sets. I invite Andre to speak briefly about manual labeling.
Yeah, so the story of data sets is critical, of course. So far, we've talked only about neural networks, but neural networks only establish an upper bound on your performance. Many of these neural networks, they have hundreds of millions of parameters, and these hundreds of millions of parameters, they have to be set correctly. If you have a bad setting of parameters, it's not going to work. So neural networks are just an upper bound. You also need massive data sets to actually.
See, I told you guys, they need a lot of manual labeling, they need a lot of advanced labeling, and then auto labeling. The machine learning algorithm is just only as good as your data labelist, literally in this case. So they need very clean data. I can literally just say whatever he's gonna say. Like there's basically in simpler words is they're trying to figure out on how do you generate proper data to train, and the reason why they're posting in online and in the public forum is because they're actually hiring for people who have ideas of how to solve these kind of problems. They basically just build up a prototype, and literally what they're just saying that is it's not yet to be there, to fully autonomous or whatever, and it's literally still in developmental stage. And for those of you who owns a Tesla, who drives it around in autopilot, you're literally like in a simulation of helping them to perfect this this model, literally. But as every mathematical system or every, even the Black-Scholes equation for options or for the stock market pricing, there's a 0.01% chance of, failing. So if there are 10,000 people driving, a Tesla, there at least one person's gonna run into an accident. So this is why you see those accidents happen. You cannot avoid it until like full autonomy is achieved. They literally can't fix it. They can lower the percentage, but they cannot change the, like maybe 1 3 months, 1 6 months, there gonna be 1 to 8 accidents, and they're selling too many cars globally, and every single country's road condition is different. Not like you see like in the US the road is like super wide, but if you drive in Asia, it's totally different. Therefore, the autopilot function will fail much more times in places like China, in Seoul, which is in Korea, in Japan. And if you drive a cars in Europe, because the depth of the road is different from in the US, and the speed limit is different, you will run into so many different problems.
And you are seeing a very small reconstruction. You're about to see a lot more reconstructions soon. But it's a very small reconstruction of the ground plane on which the car drove, and a little bit of the point cloud here that was reconstructed. And what you're seeing here is that the labeler is changing the labels directly in vector space, and then we are reprojecting those changes into camera images. So we're labeling directly in vector space, and this gave us a massive increase in throughput for a lot of our labels, because you label once in 3D, and then you get to reproject. But even this, we realized, was actually not going to cut it. Because people and computers have different pros and cons. So people are extremely good at things like semantics, but computers are very good at geometry, reconstruction, triangulation, tracking. And so really for us, it's much more becoming a story of how do humans and computers collaborate to actually create these vector space data sets. And so we're gonna now talk about auto labeling, which is some of the infrastructure we've developed for labeling these clips at scale.
Hi again. So even though we have lots of human labelers, the amount of training data needed for training the networks significantly outnumbers them. So we try to invest in a massive auto labeling pipeline. Here's an example of how we label a single clip. A clip is an entity that has dense sensor data like videos, IMU data, GPS, odometry, etc. These can be 45 seconds to a minute long. These can be uploaded by our own engineering cars or from customer cars. We collect these clips and then send them to our servers, where we run a lot of neural networks offline to produce intermediate results like segmentation masks, depth, point matching, etc. This then goes through a lot of robotics and AI algorithms to produce a final set of labels that can be used to train the networks. One of the first tasks we want to label is the road surface. Typically, we can use splines or meshes to represent the road surface, but those are, because of the topology restrictions, are not differentiable and not amenable to producing this. So what we do instead is in the style of neural radiance fields work from last year, which is quite popular. So we use an implicit representation to represent the road surface. Here, we are querying XY points on the ground and asking for the network to predict the height of the ground surface along with various semantics such as curbs, lane boundaries, road surface, drivable space, etc. So given a single XY, we get a Z. Together, these make a 3D point, and they can be reprojected into all the camera views. So we make millions of such queries and get lots of points. These points are reprojected into all the camera views. We are showing on the top right here one such camera image with all these points reprojected. Now we can compare this point, reprojected point with the image space prediction of the segmentations. And jointly optimizing this over all the camera views, both across space and time, produces an excellent reconstruction. Here's an example of how that looks like. So here, this is an optimized road surface that reprojects into the 8 cameras that the car has and across all of time. And you can see how it's consistent across both space and time. So a single car driving through some location can sweep out some patch around the trajectory using this technique. But we don't have to stop there. So here, we collected different clips from the same location, from different cars maybe, and each of them sweeps out some part of their road. Cool thing is we can bring them all together into a single giant optimization. So here, these 16 different trips are organized aligned using various features such as road edges, lane lines. All of them should agree with each other and also agree with all of their image space observations. Together, this provides an effective way to label the road surface, not just where the car drove, but also in other locations that it hasn't driven yet. Again, the point of this is not to just build HT maps or anything like that. It's only to label the clips through these intersections. So we don't have to maintain them forever, as long as the labels are consistent with the videos that they were collected at. Optionally, then humans can come on top of this and clean up any noise or add additional metadata to make it even richer. We don't have to stop at just the road surface. We can also arbitrarily reconstruct 3D static obstacles. Here, this is a reconstructed 3D point cloud from our cameras. The main innovation here is the density of the point cloud. Typically, these points require texture to form associations from one frame to the next frame. But here, we are able to produce these points even on textureless surfaces like the road surface or walls. And this is really useful to annotate arbitrary obstacles that we can see in the world. One more cool advantage of doing all of this on the servers offline is that we have the benefit of hindsight. This is a super useful hack because, say, in the car, the network needs to produce the velocity. It just has to use the historical information and guess what the velocity is. But here, we can look at both the history but also the future and basically cheat and get the correct answer of the kinematics like velocity, acceleration, etc. One more advantage is that we can have like different tracks, but we can stitch them together even through occlusions because we know the future, we have future tracks, we can match them and then associate them. So here you can see the pedestrians on the other side of the road are persisted even through multiple occlusions by these cars. This is really important for the planner because the planner needs to know if it saw someone, it still needs to account for them even then they're occluded. So this is a massive advantage. Combining everything together, we can produce these amazing data sets that annotate all of the road texture, all of the static objects, and all of the moving objects even through occlusions, producing excellent kinematic labels. You can see how the cars turn smoothly, produce really smooth labels. All the pedestrians are consistently tracked. The parked cars have basically zero velocity, so we can also know that they are parked. So this is huge for us. This is one more example of the same thing. You can see how everything is consistent. We want to produce 1 million such labeled clips and train our multicam video networks with such large data set and really crush this problem. We want to get the same view that's consistent that you're seeing here in the car. We started our first exploration of this with the Remove the Radar project. We removed it in a very short time span, I think, within 3 months. In the early days of the network, we noticed, for example, in low visibility conditions, the network can suffer understandably because obviously this truck just dumped a bunch of snow on us and it's really hard to see. But we should still remember that this car was in front of us. But our networks early on did not do this because of the lack of data in such conditions. So what we did, we asked the fleet to produce lots of similar clips, and the fleet responded, it did. So it produces, does it play? It produces lots of video clips where shit's falling out of all other vehicles. And we sent this through our auto labeling pipeline that was able to label 10K clips within a week. This would have taken several months with humans labeling every single clip here. So we did this for 200 different conditions, and we were able to very quickly create large data sets, and that's how we were able to remove this. So once we train the networks with this data, you can see that it's totally working and keeps in memory that this object was there and provides this. So finally, we wanted to actually get a Cybertruck into a data set for the remove the radar. Can you all guess where we got this clip from? I'll give you a moment. Someone said it. Yes, it's rendered. It's our simulation. It was hard for me to tell initially, and if I may say so myself, it looks pretty. It looks very pretty. So yeah, in addition to auto labeling, we also invest heavily in using simulation for labeling our data. So this is the same scene as seen before, but from a different camera angle. So a few things that I wanted to point out. For example, the ground surface. It's not plain asphalt. There are lots of cars and cracks and tar seams. There's some patchwork done on top of it. Vehicles move realistically. The truck is articulated, even goes over the curb and makes a wide turn. The other cars behave smartly. They avoid collisions, go around cars, and also smooth and accelerate smoothly, brake and accelerate smoothly. The car here with the logo on the top is Autopilot. Actually, Autopilot is driving that car, and it's making unprotected left turn. And since this is simulation, it starts from the vector space. So it has perfect labels. Here we show a few of the labels that we produce. These are vehicle cuboids with kinematics, depth, surface normals, segmentation. But Andre can name a new task that he wants next week, and we can very quickly produce this because we already have the vector space, and we can write the code to produce these labels very, very quickly. So when does simulation help? It helps, number one, when the data is difficult to source. As large as our fleet is, it can still be hard to get some crazy scenes, like this couple and their dog running on the highway while there are other high-speed cars around. This is a pretty rare scene, I'd say, but still can happen, and Autopilot still needs to handle it when it happens. When data is difficult to label, there are hundreds of pedestrians crossing the road. This could be a Manhattan, downtown, people crossing the road. It's going to take several hours for humans to label this clip. And even for automatic labeling algorithms, this is really hard to get the association right, and it can produce like bad velocities. But in simulation, this is trivial because you already have the objects. You just have to like spit out the cuboids and the velocities. And also, finally, when we introduce closed-loop behavior, where the car needs to be in a determined situation or the data depends on the actions, this is pretty much the only way to get it reliably. All this is great. What's needed to make this happen? Number one, accurate sensor simulation. Again, the point of the simulation is not to just produce pretty pictures. It needs to produce what the camera in the car would see and other sensors would see. So here, we are stepping through different exposure settings of the real camera on the left side and the simulation on the right side. We're able to pretty much match what the real cameras do. In order to do this, we had to model a lot of the properties of the camera in our sensor simulation, starting from sensor noise, motion blur, optical distortions, even headlight transmissions, even like diffraction patterns of the windshield, etc. We don't use this just for the Autopilot software. We also use it to make hardware decisions such as lens design, camera design, sensor placement, even headlight transmission properties. Second, we need to render the visuals in a realistic manner. You cannot have what in the game industry called jaggies. These are aliasing artifacts that are a dead giveaway that this is simulation. We don't want them. So we go through a lot of paints to produce nice spatio-temporal anti-aliasing. We also are working on neural rendering techniques to make this even more realistic. Yeah. In addition, we also use ray tracing to produce realistic lighting and global illumination. Okay, that's the last of the cop cars, I think. We obviously cannot have really just 4 or 5 cars because the network will easily overfit because it knows the sizes. So we need to have realistic assets like the moose on the road here. We have thousands of assets in our library, and they can wear different shirts and actually can move realistically. So this is really cool. We also have a lot of different locations mapped and created to create these sim environments. We have actually 2,000 miles of road built, and this is almost the length of the roadway from the east coast to the west coast of the United States, which I think is pretty cool. In addition, we have built efficient tooling to build several miles more on a single day for a single artist. But this is just tip of the iceberg. Actually, most of the data that we use to train is created procedurally using algorithms as opposed to artists making these simulation scenarios. So these are all procedurally created roads with lots of curvature.
Okay, just one thing. Like, they do realize that if they just, donate Tesla cars to Google and tell Google to, because Google do 24 hours, update on a 48 or 24-hour update on like around the world for Google Maps, right? So they can just run it up and then they can collaborate on a virtual map that they're building. But I doubt it because both of them have virtual map teams. And then, Google's Voyant, Waymo, is it Waymo? I think it's Waymo have their own way of doing this. So yeah, I feels like if everyone just consolidate all their efforts into building one map, then it's gonna be great. But I guess it's never gonna happen because it's just two company and Google stuff incorporated LiDAR and Tesla's doing on its own. Like, we just want to use cameras, which is making things much harder than using combination of even radar and camera or camera with LiDAR. So yeah.
From the original failure. This is amazing because we really don't want autopilot to fail, and when it fails, we want to capture it and keep it to that bar. Not just that, we can actually take the same approach that we said earlier and take it one step further. We can use neural rendering techniques to make it look even more realistic. So we take the original video clip, recreate a synthetic simulation from it, and then apply neural rendering techniques on top of it, and it produces this, which looks amazing in my opinion, because this one is very realistic and looks almost like it was captured by the actual cameras. This is a result from last night because it was cool and we wanted to present it. But yeah, I'm very excited for what Sim can achieve. But this is not all bullshit because networks trained in the car already use simulation data. We used 300 million images with almost 500 million labels. And we want to crush down all the tasks that are going to come up for the next several months. With that, I invite Milan to to explain how we scale these operations and really build a label factory and spit out millions of labels.
All right, thanks, Ashok. Hey everyone, I'm Milan. I'm responsible for the integration of our neural networks in the car and for most of our neural network training and evaluation infrastructure. And so tonight I'd just like to start by giving you some perspective into the amount of compute that's needed to power this type of data generation factory. And so in the specific context of the push we went through as a team here a few months ago to get rid of the dependency on the radar sensor for autopilot, we generated over 10 billion labels across 2.5 million clips. And so to do that, we had to scale our huge offline neural networks and our simulation engine across thousands of GPUs and just a little bit shy of 20,000 CPU cores. On top of that, we also included over 2,000 actual autopilot full self-driving computers in the loop with our simulation engine. And that's our smallest compute cluster. So I'd like to give you some idea of what it takes to take our neural networks and move them in the car. And so the two main constraints that we're working under here are mostly latency and frame rate, which are very important for safety, but also to get proper estimates of acceleration and velocity of our surroundings. And so the meat of the problem really is around the AI compiler that we write and extend here within the group that essentially maps the compute operations for my PyTorch model to a set of dedicated and accelerated pieces of hardware. And we do that while figuring out a schedule that's optimized for throughput while working under severe SRAM constraints. And so, by the way, we're not doing that just on one engine, but across two engines on the autopilot computer. And the way we use those engines here at Tesla is such that at any given time, only one of them will actually output control commands to the vehicle, while the other one is used as an extension of compute. but those roles are interchangeable, both at the hardware and software level. So how do we iterate quickly together as a group through these AI development cycles? Well, first, we have been scaling our capacity to evaluate our software and neural network dramatically over the past few years. And today, we're running over 1 million evaluations per week on any code change that the team is producing. And those evaluations run on over 3,000 actual full self-driving computers that are hooked up together in a dedicated cluster. And so on top of this, we've been developing really cool debugging tools. And so here is a video of one of our tools, which is helping developers iterate through the development of neural networks and comparing live the outputs from different revisions of a same neural network model as we're iterating live through video clips. And so last but not least, we've been scaling our neural network training compute dramatically over the past few years. And today, we're barely shy of 10,000 GPUs, which, just to give you some sense, in terms of number of GPU, is more than the top 5 publicly known supercomputers in the world. But that's not enough, and so I'd like to invite Ganesh to talk about the next steps.
Thank you, Milan.
Oh, by the way, those GPUs are gonna get burned out in about 4 years. Okay, so this is a very expensive simulation to run. So I'm pretty sure they're not gonna go into the cost of it, but I'm pretty sure it's cost them a lot of money, lot of money.
For speed as well as capacity for neural network training. And Elon prefetched this, and a few years back, he asked us to design a super fast training computer, and that's how we started Project Dojo. Our goal is to achieve best AI training performance and support all these larger, more complex models that Andre's team is dreaming of, and be power efficient and cost effective at the same time. So we thought about how to build this, and we came up with a distributed compute architecture. After all the training computers out there are distributed computers in one form or the other. They have compute elements in the box out here connected with some kind of network. In this case, it's a 2-dimensional network, but it could be any different network. CPU, GPU, accelerators, all of them have compute, little memory, and network. But one thing which is common trend amongst this is it's easy to scale the compute. It's very difficult to scale up bandwidth and extremely difficult to reduce latencies. And you'll see how our design point catered to that, how our philosophy addressed these aspects of traditional limits. For Dojo, we envisioned a large compute plane filled with very robust compute elements backed with large pool of memory and interconnected with very high bandwidth and low latency fabric and in a 2D mesh format. And on to this, for extreme scale, big neural networks will be partitioned and mapped to extract different parallelism, model, graph, data parallelism. And then a neural compiler of ours will exploit spatial and temporal locality such that it can reduce communication footprint to local zones and reduce global communication. And if we do that, our bandwidth utilization can keep scaling with the plane of compute that we desire out here. We wanted to attack this all the way, top to bottom of the stack, and remove any bottlenecks at any of these levels. And let's start this journey in an inside-out fashion, starting with the chip. As I described, chips have compute elements. Our smallest entity of scale is called a training node. And the choice of this node is very important to ensure seamless scaling. If you go too small, it will run fast, but the overheads of synchronization and software will dominate. If you pick it too big, it will have complexities in implementation in the real hardware and ultimately run into memory bottleneck issues. Because we wanted to address We wanted to address latency and bandwidth as our primary optimization point. Let's see how we went about doing this. What we did was we picked the farthest distance a signal could traverse in a very high clock cycle, in this case, 2 gigahertz plus. And we drew a box around it. This is the smallest latency that a signal can traverse, 1 cycle at a very high frequency. And then we filled up the box with wires to the brink. This is the highest bandwidth you can feed the box with. And then we added machine learning compute underneath, and then a large pool of SRAM. And last but not the least, a programmable core to control. And this gave us our high-performance training node. What this is a 64-bit superscalar CPU optimized around matrix multiply units and vector SIMD. It supports floating point 32, bfloat 16, and a new format, CFP8, configurable FP8. And it is backed by 1.25 megabyte of fast ECC-protected SRAM and the low-latency, high-bandwidth fabric that we designed. This might be our smallest entity of scale, but it packs a big punch. More than 1 teraflop of compute in our smallest entity of scale. So let's look at the architecture of this. The computer architects out here may recognize this. This is a pretty capable architecture as soon as you see this. It is a superscalar in-order CPU with 4 wide vector and 4 wide scalar and 2 wide vector pipes. We call it in order, although the vector and the scalar pipes can go out of order, but for the purists out there, we still call it in order. And it also has 4-way multi-threading. This increases utilization because we could do compute and data transfers simultaneously. And our custom ISA, which is the instruction set architecture, is fully optimized for machine learning workloads. It has features like transpose, gather, link traversals, broadcast, just to name a few. And even in the physical realm, we made it extremely modular, such that we could start abutting these training nodes in any direction and start forming the compute plane that we envisioned. When we click together 354 of these training nodes, we get our compute array. It's capable of delivering 362 teraflops of machine learning compute. And of course, the high bandwidth fabric that interconnects these. And around this compute array, we surrounded it with high-speed, low-power SerDeses, 576 of them, to enable us to have extreme I/O bandwidth coming out of this chip. Just to give you a comparison point, this is more than 2 times the bandwidth coming out of the state-of-the-art networking switch chips which are out there today. And network switch chips are supposed to be the gold standards for I/O bandwidth. If we put all of it together, we get training optimized chip, our D1 chip. This chip is manufactured in 7 nanometer technology. It packs 50 billion transistors in a miserly 6.
Guys, we all understand that all of these technical stuff doesn't matter, right? Like what is really important is what Elon's gonna say by the end of this presentation. So hold on there, because I think these technical guys have another 30-minute runway, and then Elon's gonna come out and say something, either stupid or something, just what he's gonna say, and we will know. And according to our poll right now, let's just see, 64% of you have rated a very, very low percentage, and 29% of you are still hopeful, and 50% of you think, 7% of you think 50% Elon's gonna say it. I honestly don't think he's gonna even mention material in general.
Like a GPU compute with a CPU level flexibility and twice the network chip level I/O bandwidth. If I were to plot the I/O bandwidth on the vertical scale versus teraflops of compute that is available in the state-of-the-art machine learning chips out there, including some of the startups, you can easily see why our design point excels beyond par. Now that we had this fundamental physical building block, how to design the system around it. Let's see. Since D1 chips can seamlessly connect without any glue to each other, we just started putting them together. We just put 500,000 training nodes together to form our compute plane. This is 1,500 D1 chips seamlessly connected to each other. And then we add Dojo interface processors on each end. This is the host bridge to typical hosts in the data centers. It's connected with PCI Gen 4 on one side with a high bandwidth fabric to our compute plane. The interface processors provide not only the host bridge, but high bandwidth DRAM shared memory for the compute plane. In addition, the interface processors can also allow us to have a higher radix network connection. In order to achieve this compute plane, we had to come up with a new way of integrating these chips together. And this is what we call as a training tile. This is the unit of scale for our system. This is a groundbreaking integration of 25 known good D1 dies onto a fan-out wafer process, tightly integrated such that it preserves the bandwidth between them. The maximum bandwidth is preserved there. And in addition, we generated a connector, a high bandwidth, high density connector that preserves the bandwidth coming out of this training tile. And this tile gives us 9 petaflops of compute with a massive I/O bandwidth coming out of it. This, perhaps, is the biggest organic MCM in the chip industry, multi-chip module.
It is funny. He said teraflop instead of terabytes. This is an Indian thing, I think.
All the tools were croaking. Even our compute cluster couldn't handle it. Our engineers came up with different ways of solving this. They created new methods to make this a reality. Now that we had our compute plane tile with high bandwidth IOs, we had to feed it with power. And here, we came up with a new way of feeding power vertically. We created a custom voltage regulator module that could be reflowed directly onto this fan-out wafer. So what we did out here is we got chip, package, and we brought PCB-level technology of reflow onto this fan-out wafer technology. This is a lot of integration already out here, but we didn't stop here. We integrated the entire electrical, thermal, and mechanical pieces out here to form our training tile fully integrated, interfacing with a 52-volt DC input. It's unprecedented. This is an amazing piece of engineering. Our compute plane is completely orthogonal to power supply and cooling. That makes high bandwidth compute planes possible. What it is a 9 petaflop training tile. This becomes our unit of scale for our system. And this is real. I can't believe I'm holding 9 petaflops out here. And in fact, last week, we got our first functional training tile. And on a limited cooling benchtop setup, we got some networks running. And I was told Andre doesn't believe that we could run networks till we could run one of his creations. Andre, This is MinGPT-2 running on Dojo. Do you believe it? Next up, how to form a compute cluster out of it. By now, you must have realized our modularity story is pretty strong. We just put together some tiles. We just tile together tiles. A 2x3 tile in a tray makes our training matrix, and 2 trays in a.
So we put it simpler. They basically have a high-tech chip cluster that build a high-tech data processing facility. Basically, this is what they're trying to tell you guys, like what really is gonna happening. And then, hey guys, it's pretty groundbreaking in this area. And also, if you go online and they passed a patent for the power grid, and they passed a patent for for integration online. You can actually search up for that patent. Go check it out.
One exaflop of compute in 10 cabinets. It's more than 1 million training nodes that you saw. We paid meticulous attention to that training node, and there are 1 million nodes out here with uniform bandwidth. Not just the hardware, the software aspects are so important to ensure scaling. And not every job requires a huge cluster, so we planned for it right from the get-go. Our compute plane can be subdivided, can be partitioned into units called Dojo processing unit. A DPU consists of 1 or more D1 chips. It also has our interface processor and 1 or more hosts. And this can be scaled up or down as per the needs of any algorithm, any network running on it. What does the user have to do? They have to change their scripts minimally. And this is because of our strong compiler suite. It takes care of fine-grained parallelism and mapping the problems of mapping the neural networks very efficiently onto our compute plane. Our compiler uses multiple techniques to extract parallelism. It can transform the networks to achieve not only fine-grained parallelism using data model graph parallelism techniques, it also can do optimizations to reduce memory footprints. One thing, because of our high bandwidth nature of the fabric is enabled out here, is model parallelism could not have been extended to the same level as what we can. It was limited to chip boundaries. Now we can, because of our high bandwidth, we can extend it to training tiles and beyond. Thus, large networks can be efficiently mapped here at low batch sizes and extract utilization and new levels of performance. In addition, our compiler is capable of handling high-level dynamic control flows like loops, if then else, etc. And our compiler engine is just part of our entire software suite. The stack consists of an extension to PyTorch that ensures the same user-level interfaces that ML scientists are used to. And our compiler generates code on the fly such that it could be reused for subsequent execution. It has a LLVM backend that generates the binary for the hardware. And this ensures we can create optimized code for the hardware without relying on even single line of handwritten kernel. Our driver stack takes care of the multi-host, multi-partitioning that you saw a few slides back. And then we also have profilers and debuggers in our software stack. So with all this, we integrated in a vertical fashion. We broke the traditional barriers to scaling. And that's how We got modularity up and down the stack to add to new levels of performance. To sum it all, this is what it will be. It will be a fastest AI training computer, 4x the performance at the same cost, 1.3x better performance per watt, that is energy saving, and 5x smaller footprint. This will be Dojo computer. And we are not done. We are assembling our first cabinets pretty soon, and we have a whole next generation plan already. We are thinking about 10x more with different aspects that we can do, all the way from silicon to the system again.
Okay, this part is important. What they're talking about 10x improvement. They're matching the quantum chips that Google developed a year and a half ago. So they're matching basically.
And next up, Elon will update us on what's beyond our vehicle fleet for AI.
All right. Thank you. Now, unlike Dojo, obviously that was not real. So Dojo is real. The Tesla bot will be real. But basically, if you think about what we're doing right now with the cars, Tesla is arguably the world's biggest robotics company because our cars are like semi-sentient robots on wheels. And with the full self-driving computer, essentially the inference engine on the car, which will keep evolving, obviously, and Dojo, and all the neural nets recognizing the world, understanding how to navigate through the world, it kind of makes sense to put that onto a humanoid form. And we're also quite good at sensors and batteries and actuators. So we think we'll probably have a prototype sometime next year that basically looks like this. And it's intended to be friendly, of course, and navigate through a world built for humans and eliminate dangerous, repetitive, and boring tasks. We're setting it such that it is, at a mechanical level, at a physical level, you can run away from it. And most likely overpower it. So hopefully that doesn't ever happen, but you never know. So it'll be a light, yeah, anyway, 5 miles an hour. If you can run faster than that, it'll be fine. So yeah, it's around 5'8". Has sort of a screen where the head is for useful information. but it's otherwise basically got the autopilot system in it. So it's got cameras, got 8 cameras, and yeah. Full self-driving computer, and making use of all of the same tools that we use in the car. So, I mean, things that I think that are really hard about having a useful humanoid robot is, can it navigate through the world without being explicitly trained? I mean, without explicit, like, line-by-line instructions. Can you talk to it and say, you know, please pick up that bolt and attach it to the car with that wrench, and it should be able to do that. It should be able to, please go to the store and get me the following groceries, that kind of thing. So, yeah, I think we can do that. And yeah, this I think will be quite profound, because if you say, like, what is the economy? It is at the foundation, it is labor. So, what happens when there is, no shortage of labor? This is why I think long term that there will need to be universal basic income. Yeah. But not right now, because this robot doesn't work. So, we just need a minute. So, yeah, but I think essentially in the future, physical work will be a choice. If you want to do it, you can, but you won't need to do it. And yeah, I think it obviously has profound implications for the economy, because given that the economy at its foundational level is labor, I mean, capital equipment is just distilled labor, then is there any actual limit to the economy? Maybe not. So, yeah. Join our team and help build this. All right, so I think we'll have everyone come back on the stage, and you guys can ask questions if you'd like. Yeah.
Guys, this is just funny. They because every time he overhypes people, like the stuff are just gonna shoot up. It's pretty fascinating. But I think a lot of investors are just wondering about how much money they're spending on this. So yeah, I think now he's just calling people on stage and answering questions. You guys can also ask questions, because my subfield is machine learning. So then you can ask anything that you don't understand. I will dumb it down for you guys, and I can also translate some of the lingo that you're talking about. So just ask questions and ask them on chat, and I'll answer them after they ask questions. Or if you guys are too bored, then we can just end the stream and sort of like leave 15 minutes to answer you guys' questions, because I basically I understand 90% of what they're talking about, and I also found some problems with it. But hey, Elon the hype master, right?
I can just, okay, there we go. First off, I mean, thanks to all the presenters. That was just super cool to see everything. I'm just curious at a high level, and this is kind of a question for really anyone who wants to take it. To what extent are you interested in publishing or open sourcing anything that you do for the future?
Well, I mean, it is fundamentally extremely expensive to create the system, so somehow that has to be paid for. I'm not sure how to pay for it if it's fully open sourced. Yeah, unless people want to work for free. But I should say that this is, if other car companies want to license it and use it in their cars, that would be cool. This is not intended to be just limited to Tesla cars.
Is for the Dojo supercomputer. So did you solve the compiler problem of scaling to these many nodes, or if it is solved, is it only applicable to Dojo? Because I'm doing research in deep learning accelerators, and getting the correct scalability or the distribution, even in one chip, is extremely difficult from the research project's perspective. So I was just curious.
Excuse me, mic for Bill. You want to?
Have we solved the problem? Not yet. Are we confident we will solve the problem? Yes. We have demonstrated networks on prototype hardware now. We have models, performance models showing the scaling. The difficulty is, as you said, how do we keep the localities? If we can do enough model parallel, enough data parallel to keep most of the things local, we just keep scaling. We have to fit the parameters in our working set in our SRAM that we have, and we flow through the pipe. There's plenty of opportunities. Sorry, as we get further scale for further processor nodes, have more local memory trade-offs with bandwidth, we can do more things. But as we see it now, the applications that Tesla has, we see a clear path.
And our modularity story means we can have different ratios, different aspects created out of it. I mean, this is something that we chose for our applications internally.
Sure.
I was just saying that the locality portion of it, given that training is such a soft scaling application, even though you have all this compute and have a high bandwidth interconnect, it could not give you that performance because you are doing computations on limited memory at different locations. So I was that's very curious to me when you said it's solved, because I just jumped onto the opportunity and would love to know more, given that how much you can open source.
Right in there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess the proof's in the pudding. So we should have Dojo operational next year, and I think we'll obviously use it for training, video training. I mean, fundamentally, this is about like the primary application initially is we've got vast amounts of video, and how do we train vast amounts of video as efficiently as possible, and also shorten the amount of time. Like if you're trying to train to a task, like just in general, innovation is how many iterations and what is the average progress between each iteration. And so if you can reduce the time between iterations, the rate of improvement is much better. So if it takes like sometimes a couple days for a model to train versus a couple hours, that's a big deal. But the acid test here, and what I've told the Dojo team is like it's successful if the software team wants to turn off the GPU cluster. But if they want to keep the GPU cluster on, it's not successful. So, yeah.
Hi, right over here. Love the presentation. Thank you for getting us out here. Loved everything, especially the simulation part of the presentation. I was wondering, it looked very realistic. Are there any plans to maybe expand simulation to other parts of the company in any way?
Mike, too?
Yeah. Hi, I'm Ian Glow. I manage the autopilot simulation team. So as we go down the path to full self-driving, we're going to have to simulate more and more of the vehicle. Currently, we're simulating vehicle dynamics, but we're going to need BMS, we're going to need the MCU, we're going to need every single part of the vehicle integrated. And that actually makes the autopilot simulator really useful for places outside of autopilot. So I want to expand, or we want to expand eventually to being a universal simulation platform. But I think before that, we're going to be spinning up a lot of Optimus support. And then a little bit further down the line, we have some rough ideas on potentially how to get the simulation infrastructure and some of the cool things we've built into the hands of people outside of the company.
Optimus is the code name for the Tesla bot.
Oops.
Optimus subprime.
Hi, this is Ali Jahanian. Thank you for the great presentation and putting all of these cool things together. Yeah, for a while I have been thinking that the car is already a robot. So why not a humanoid robot? And I'm so happy that today you mentioned that you are going to build such a thing. Especially, I think that this can give opportunity for ways of putting multi-modality together. For instance, we know that in the example that you showed that there was a dog and with some passengers or running together. The language and symbolic processing can really help for visualizing that. So I was wondering if I could hear a little more about this type of putting modalities together, including language and vision. Because I have been working with, for instance, mini GPT that Andre put out there. And yeah, I didn't hear much about other modalities that's going into the car, or at least in the simulation. Is there any comment that you could tell us?
Well, driving is fundamentally basically almost entirely vision neural nets. Basically, it's running on a biological vision neural net, and what we're doing here is a silicon camera neural net. So there is some amount of audio. You want to hear if there's like emergency vehicles, or I guess converse with the people in the car. If somebody's yelling something at the car, the car needs to understand what that is. So all the things that are necessary for it to be fully autonomous. Yeah. Thank you.
Hi, thank you for all the great work that you've shown. My question is for the team, because the data that was shown seems to be predominantly from the United States that the FSD computer is being trained on. But as it gets rolled out to different countries, which have their own road systems and challenges that come with it, how do you think that it's going to scale? Like I'm assuming ground up is not a very viable solution. So how does that transfer to different countries?
Well, we actually do train on using data from probably like 50 different countries, but we have to pick. As we're trying to advance full self-driving, we need to pick one country, and since we're located here, we pick the U.S. And then we get a lot of questions like, why not even Canada? I'm like, well, because the roads are a little different in Canada, different enough. And so when trying to solve a hard problem, you want to say like, okay, let's not add additional complexity right now. Let's just solve it for the US, and then we'll extrapolate to the rest of the world. But we do use video from all around the world.
Yeah, I think a lot of what we are building is very country agnostic. Fundamentally, all of the computer vision components and so on don't care too much about country specific sort of features. Different countries have roads, and they have curbs, and they have cars, and everything we're building is fairly general for that.
Yeah, and then the prime directive is don't crash.
Right, and that's true for every country.
Yes, this is the prime directive. Even right now, the car is pretty good at not crashing. And so just basically, whatever it is, don't hit it. Even if it's a UFO that crash landed on the highway, and still don't hit it. You should not need to recognize it in order to not hit it. So that's very important.
And I want to ask that when you do the photometric process, multi-view geometry, how much of an error do you see? Is it like 1 millimeter, 1 centimeter? So if it's not confidential.
Sorry, the question, what is the resolution?
What's the difference between the synthetic? Sure. What is the difference between the synthetically created geometry to the actual geometry?
Yeah, it's usually within a couple centimeters, 3 or 4 centimeters. That's the standard deviation.
with different kind of modalities to bring down that error?
We primarily try to find scalable ways to label. In some occasions, we use other sensors to help benchmark, but we primarily try to use cameras for this system.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, I mean, I think we want to aim for the car to be positioned accurately to the sort of centimeter level, you know, something on that order.
Obviously, it will depend on distance. Like close by things can
exactly.
be much more accurate than farther away things, and they would matter less because the car doesn't have to make decisions much farther away. And as it comes close, it will become more and more accurate.
Exactly. A lot of questions.
Thanks, everybody. My question has to do with sort of AI and manufacturing. It's been a while since we've heard about the alien dreadnought concept. Is the humanoid that's behind you guys, is that kind of brought out of the production hell timeline and saying that humans are underrated in that process?
Well, sometimes like you know, something that I say is taken to too much of an extreme. There are parts of the Tesla system that are almost completely automated, and then there are some parts that are almost completely manual. If you were to walk through the whole production system, you would see a very wide range from, yeah, like I said, fully automatic to almost completely manual. But the vast majority, most of it is already automated. And then with some of the design architecture changes, like going to large aluminum high-pressure die-cast components, we can take the entire rear third of the car and cast it as a single piece. And now we're going to do the front third of the car as a single piece. So the body line drops by like 60 to 70% in size. But yeah, the robot is not prompted by specifically by manufacturing needs. It's just that we're just obviously making the pieces that are needed for a useful humanoid robot. So I guess we probably should make it. And if we don't, someone else will. And so I guess we should make it and make sure it's safe. I should say, like, also volume manufacturing is extremely difficult and underrated, and we've gotten pretty good at that. So it's also important for that humanoid robot. Like, how do you make the humanoid robot not be super expensive? And, you know.
Hi. Thank you for the presentation. And my question will be about scaling of Dojo. And in particular, how do you scale the compute nodes in terms of thermals and power delivery? Because there is only so much heat that you can dispense and only so much power that you can bring to like cluster rack. And how do you plan to scale it? And how do you plan to scale it in multiple data centers?
Sure. You want to take it? Oh, there.
Yeah, hi. I'm Bill. I'm one of the Dojo engineers. So from a thermal standpoint and power standpoint, we've designed it very modular. So what you saw in the compute tile, that will cool the entire tile. So once we hook it up to, it is liquid cooled on both the top and the bottom side. It doesn't need anything else. And so when we talk about clicking these together, once we click it to power and once we click it to cooling, it will be fully powered and fully cooled. And all of that is less than a cubic foot.
Yeah, so Tesla has a lot of expertise in power electronics and in cooling. So we took the power electronics expertise from the vehicle powertrain and the sort of the advanced cooling that we developed for the power electronics and for the vehicle, and applied that to the supercomputer. Because as you point out, getting heat out is extremely important. It's just really heat limited. So, yeah, so it's funny that like at the compute level, it's operating at less than a volt, which is a very low voltage. There's a lot of amps, so therefore a lot of heat. I squared R is really bites you on the ass.
Hi. My question is also similarly a question of scaling. So it seems like a natural consequence of using significantly faster training hardware is that you'd be either training models over a lot more data, or you'd be training a lot more complex models, which would be potentially significantly more expensive to run at inference time on the cars. I guess I was wondering if there was a plan to also apply Dojo as something that you'd be using on the self-driving cars, and if so, do you foresee additional challenges there?
So as you could see, Andre's models are not just for cars. There are auto labeling models. There are other models that are beyond car application, but they feed into the car stack. So Dojo will be used for all of those too, not just the car inference part of the training.
Yeah, I mean, the Dojo's first application will be consuming video data for training that would then be run in the inference engine on the car. But and that I think is an important test to see if it actually is good, but is it actually better than GPU cluster or not? But then beyond that, it's basically a generalized neural net training computer. But it is very much optimized to be a neural net. So CPUs and GPUs, they're not made to be. They're not designed specifically for training neural nets. We've been able to make GPUs especially very efficient for training neural nets, but that was never their design intent. So it's basically GPUs are still essentially running at neural net training in emulation mode. So with Dojo, we're saying okay, let's just ASIC the whole thing. Let's just have this thing it's built for one purpose, and that is neural net training. And just generally, any system that is designed for a specific purpose will be better than one that is designed for a general purpose.
Hey, I had a question here. Hi. So you described two separate systems. One was for vision, the other was for planner and control. Does Dojo allow you to train networks that cross that boundary? And second thing is, if you were able to train such networks, would you have the onboard compute capability in the FSD system to be able to run that under your tight latency constraints? Thanks.
Yeah, I think we should be able to train planner networks on Dojo or any GPUs. It's really invariant to the platform. And I think, if anything, once we make
like a lot of those questions are can you do this? Can you do that? They didn't really hit on the main question. It's just what do you see that Dojo in just say 5 years? Because right now it's the only POC, right? Proof of concept. So whatever they do right now, it's highly expensive and probably improbable to a production level. It's basically just a simulator that it's an advanced floating point unit, right? I said on the screen the FPU. So then it should be better than GPU, but what they're trying to their line between lines is, okay, the engineers are running both Dojo and running the GPU cluster. So what they're trying to figure out is whether they can run Dojo alone without the GPU or not. If they cannot, then Dojo is not ready yet, or they need further improvement, basically. I don't think the audience is getting that, but hey, this is just a dumbed down version of why he asked the question.
And once we do that, you should be able to do planning very quickly, similar to C++ algorithms.
Okay. Oh, you're okay. I think I had a question very similar to what he was asking about. It seems like a lot of the neural nets are around computer vision. And kind of traditional planning, you had model predictive control and solving convex optimization problems very quickly. And I'd wonder if there's a compute architecture that's more suited for convex optimization or the model predictive control solutions very quickly.
Yeah, 100%. We want to bake in, like I said earlier, we want to bake in these architectures that do, say, model predictive control, but it just replace some of the blocks with neural networks. Or if we know the physics of it, we can also use physics-based models, part of the neural networks, for our pass itself. So we are going to go towards a hybrid system where we will have neural network blocks placed together with physics-based blocks and more neural networks later. So it will be a hybrid stack, and what we know to do well, we place it explicitly, and what the networks are great at, we'll use the networks to optimize this. So build an end-to-end stack with this architecture baked in.
I mean, I do think that so as long as you've got like surround video neural nets for understanding what's going on and can convert the surround video into vector space, then you basically have a video game. And if it's like if you're in Grand Theft Auto or whatever, you can make the cars drive around and pedestrians walk around without crashing. So you can do. You don't have to have a neural net for control and planning, but it's probably ultimately better. But I think you can probably get to. In fact, I'm sure you can get to much safer than human with control and planning, primarily in C++ with perception, vision in neural nets.
Hi. My question is, we've seen other companies, for example, use reinforcement learning and machine learning to optimize power consumption in data centers and all kinds of other internal processes. My question is Tesla using machine learning within its manufacturing design or other engineering processes?
I discourage use of machine learning because it's really difficult. Unless you have to use machine learning, don't do it. It's usually a red flag when somebody says, we want to use machine learning to solve this task. I'm like, that sounds like bullshit. 99.9% of the time, you do not need it. So it's kind of like you reach for machine learning when you need to, but I've not found it to be a convenient, easy thing to do. It's a super hard thing to do. Now, that may change if you've got a humanoid robot that can, understand normal instructions. Generally minimize use of machine learning in the factory.
Hi. Based on your videos from the simulator, it looked like a combination of graphical and neural approaches. I'm curious what the set of underlying techniques that are used for your simulator and specifically for neural rendering, if you can share.
Yeah, so we're doing, at the bottom of the stack, it's just traditional game techniques, just rasterization, real time, very similar to what you'd see in like GTA. On top of that, we're doing real-time ray tracing, and then those results were really hot off the press. We had that little asterisk at the bottom that was from last night. We're going into the neural rendering space. We're trying out a bunch of different things. We want to get to the point where the neural rendering is the cherry on the top that pushes it to the point where the models will never be able to overfit on our simulator. Currently, we're doing things similar to photorealism enhancement. There's a recent paper enhancing photorealism enhancement, but we can do a lot more than what they could do in that paper because we have way more labeled data, way more compute, and also we have a lot more control over our environments. And we also have a lot of people who can help us make this run at real time. But we're going to try whatever we can do to get to the point where we can train everything just with the simulator if we had to, but we will never have to because we have so much real-world data that no one else has. It's just to fill in the little gaps in the real world.
Yeah, the simulator is very helpful when there's like these rare cases like collision avoidance right before an accident. And then, ironically, the better our cars become at avoiding accidents, the fewer accidents there are, so then our training set is small, so then we have to make them crash in the simulation. So it's like, okay, minimize potential injury to pedestrians and people in the car. You have 5 meters, you're traveling at 20 meters per second. What actions would minimize probability of injury? We can run that in sim. So, like cars driving down the wrong side of the highway, that kind of thing. Happens occasionally, but not that often.
For your humanoid context, I'm wondering if you've decided on what use cases you're going to start with and what the grand challenge is are in that context to make this viable?
Well, I think for the Tesla bot, Optimus, it's basically going to start with just dealing with work that is boring, repetitive, and dangerous. Basically, what is the work that people would least like to do? Yeah.
Hi. So quick question about your simulations. Obviously, they're not perfect right now. So are you using any sort of domain adaptation techniques to basically bridge the gap between your simulated data and your actual real-world data? Because I imagine it's kind of dangerous to just deploy models which are solely trained on simulated data. So maybe some sort of explicit domain adaptation or something. Is that going on anywhere in your pipeline?
So currently, we're producing the videos straight out of the simulator, the full clips with kinematics and everything, and then we're just immediately training on them, but it's not the entire data set. It's just a small targeted segment, and we only are evaluating based on real-world video. We're paying a lot of attention to make sure we don't overfit, and if we have to start doing fancier things, we will, but currently we're not having an issue with it overfitting on the simulator. We will as we scale up the data, and that's what we're hoping to use neural rendering to bridge that gap, to push that even further out. We've already done things where we're using like the same network as in the car, but retrain it to detect sim versus real to drive our art decisions, and that's actually helped prevent some of these things as well.
Yeah, just to emphasize that overwhelmingly, the data set is the real video from the cars on the actual roads. Nothing's weirder or has more corner cases than reality. It gets really strange out there. But then if we find, say, a few examples of something very odd, and there's some very odd pictures we've seen, then in order to train it effectively, we want to create simulations, say 1,000 simulations that are variants of that quirky thing that we saw, to fill in some important gaps and make the system better. And really, all of this is about, over time, just reducing the probability of a crash or an injury, and it's called the march of nines. Like, how do you get to 99.9999999% safe? And each 9 is an order of magnitude difficulty increase.
Hey all, thanks so much for the presentation. I was curious about the Tesla bot. Specifically, I'm wondering if there are any specific applications that you think the humanoid form factor lends itself to. And then secondary, because of its human form factor, is emotion or companionship at all thought about on the product roadmap at all?
Well, we certainly hope this does not feature in a dystopian sci-fi movie. But like, really, at this point, we're saying like maybe this robot can. We're trying to be as literal as possible. Can it do boring, dangerous, repetitive jobs that people don't want to do? And once we can have it do that, then maybe it can do other things too. But that's the thing that would be really great to have. So it could be your buddy too. I mean, you can buy one and have it be your friend and whatever. I'm sure that people will think of some very creative uses.
So firstly, thanks for the really incredible presentation. My question is on the AI side. So one thing we've been seeing is that with some of these language modeling AIs, we've seen that scaling has just had incredible impacts in their capabilities and what they're able to do. So I was wondering whether you're seeing similar kinds of effects of scaling in your neural networks and your applications.
Absolutely. A bigger network, typically we see it performs better, provided you have the data to also train it with. And this is also what we see for ourselves. Definitely in the car, we have some latency consideration to be mindful of. And so there we have to get creative to actually deploy much, much larger networks. But as we mentioned, we don't only train neural networks for what goes in the car. We have these auto-labeling pipelines that can utilize models of arbitrary size. So in fact, we've trained a number of models that are not deployable, that are significantly larger and work much better because we want 100%, like we want much higher accuracy for the auto-labeling. And so we've done a lot of that, and there we definitely see this trend.
Yeah, the order labeling is an extremely important part of this whole situation. Without the order labeling, I think we would not be able to solve the self-driving problem.
It's kind of a funny form of distillation where you're using these very massive models plus the structure of the problem to do this reconstruction, and then you distill that into neural networks that you deploy to the car. But we basically have a lot of neural networks and a lot of tasks that are never intended to go into the car.
Yeah, and also as time goes on, you get new frames of information. So you really want to make sure your computer is distributed across all the information as opposed to just taking a single frame and hogging on it for, say, 200 milliseconds. You actually have newer frames coming in, so you want to use all of the information and not just use that one frame.
I think one of the things we're seeing is that the car's predictive ability is eerily good. It's really getting better than human in terms of predicting, like you said, predict what this road will look like when it's out of sight, like it's around the bend, and it predicts the road with very high accuracy, predict pedestrians or cyclists where behind, where it just sees a little corner of the bicycle and a little bit through the windows of the bus. And its ability to predict things is going to be much better than humans, like really way beyond.
Right. Yeah, we see this often where we have something that is not visible, but the neural network is making up stuff that actually is very sensible. Sometimes it's eerily good, and you have to you're wondering this is in the training set. And actually in the limit, you can imagine the neural net has enough parameters to potentially remember Earth. So in the limit, it could actually give you the correct answer, and it's kind of like an HD map baked into the weights of the neural net.
Yeah.
I have a question about the design of the Tesla bot. Specifically, how important is it to maintain that humanoid form? To build hands with 5 fingers that also respects the weight limits could be quite challenging. You might have to use cable-driven, and then that also causes all kinds of issues.
I mean, this is just going to be bot version 1. I mean, we'll see. So it needs to be able to do things that people do, and be a generalized humanoid robot. I mean, you could potentially have it give it 2 fingers and a thumb or something like that. For now we'll give it 5 fingers and see if that works out okay. It probably will. It doesn't need to be have incredible grip strength, but it needs to be able to work with tools, and carry a bag, that kind of thing.
Hi, thanks a lot for the presentation. So an old professor of mine told me that the thing he disliked a lot about his Tesla was that the autopilot UX didn't really inspire much confidence in the system, especially when objects are spinning, classifications are flickering. I was wondering, even if you have a good self-driving system, how are you working on convincing Tesla owners, other road users, and just the general public that your system is safe and reliable?
Well, I think that's the cars. A while back, cars used to spin. They don't spin anymore. Not in. If you've seen the FSD beta videos, they're pretty solid, and they will be getting more solid.
Yeah, as we add more and more data and train these multi-cam video networks, these are pretty recent, actually, just a few months old, and they're still improving. It's not a done product, and in our minds we can clearly see how this is just going to be perfect vector space, because why not? All the information is there in the videos. It should produce it given lots of data and good architectures, and this is just an intermediate point in that timeline.
I mean, it's clearly headed to way better than human, without question.
My turn? Oh, hi, here. I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about the short to medium-term economics of the bot, I guess. I understand the long-term vision of replacing physical labor, but I also think repetitive, dangerous, and boring tasks tend to not be so highly compensated. And so I just don't see how to reproduce the, start with a supercar and then break into like the lower end of the market. How do you do that for a robot humanoid?
Well, I guess you'll just have to see.
Hello. Hi. I was curious to know how the car AI prioritizes occupant safety versus pedestrian safety, and what thought process goes into like deciding how to bake this into the AI.
All right, guys. I think what we're gonna do is we're gonna end the stream a little bit early because they're asking repetitive questions, and a lot of them are not that interesting in terms of like a finance perspective of this. I think it's really cool, and I love Elon when he speaks because I think it's funny. But at the same time, time's limited. I'd rather go spend more time trying to dig up like some patents that just filed or something to figure out like how actually they built Dojo and figure out what went into it, what our manufacturers fit, maybe invest some of it into those companies. So I'm gonna just take out another 10 minutes for any of you who have any questions. We're gonna end this stream around 8 o'clock PST. So if you have any questions, just ask them right now, and if you don't, then we're just gonna listen to the next 10 minutes of whatever Elon's gonna say. Yeah.
Can't be done. I mean, it would take like a month just to render one frame out of 60 in a second in a video game. It's computers are fast and humans are slow. I mean, for example, on the rocket side, you cannot steer the rocket to orbit. We actually hooked up a joystick to see if anyone could steer the rocket to orbit, but you need to react at roughly 6-7 hertz. People can't do it. Not even that's pretty low. We're talking more like aiming for like 30 hertz type of thing.
Hi. Over here. With hardware 3, there's been lots of speculation that with larger nets, it's hitting the limits of what it can provide. How much headroom has the extended compute modes provided, and at what point would hardware 4 be required, if at all?
Well, I'm confident that hardware 3 or the Full Self-Driving Computer 1 will be able to achieve Full Self-Driving at a safety level much greater than a human, probably, I don't know, at least 200 or 300% better than a human. Then obviously there will be a future hardware 4 or Full Self-Driving Computer 2, which we'll probably introduce with the Cybertruck. So maybe in about a year or so. That is probably, well, that'll be about 4 times more capable, roughly. But it's really just going to be like, can we take it from, say, for argument's sake, 300% safer than a person to 1,000% safer? Just like there are people on the road who, with varying driving abilities, but we still let people drive. You don't have to be the world's best driver to be on the road. So, as we see. So, yeah. You guys want to say anything? All right.
So are you worried at all, since you don't have any depth sensors on the car, that people might try like adversarial attacks, like printed out photos or something to try to trick the RGB neural network?
Yeah, like what? Pull some like Wile E. Coyote stuff, like paint the tunnel on the wall. It's like, oops. We haven't really seen much of that. I mean, for sure, like right now, if you, most likely, if you had like a T-shirt with a T-shirt with like a stop sign on it, which I actually have a T-shirt with a stop sign on it, and then you like flash the car, it will stop. I proved that. But we can obviously, as we see these adversarial attacks, then we can train the cars to, notice that, well, it's actually a person wearing a T-shirt with a stop sign on it, so it's probably not a real stop sign. Yeah.
Hi, my question is about the prediction and the planning. I'm curious, how do you incorporate uncertainty into your planning algorithms? Do you just basically assume, you mentioned that you run the autopilot for all of the other cars on the road. Do you assume that they're all going to follow those rules, or are you accounting for the possibility that, well, they might be bad drivers, for example?
Yeah, we do account for multimodal futures. It's not that we just choose one.
All right here. I think we're just gonna end it, consider you guys don't have any questions. Honestly, you guys can ask me technical questions about Tesla. I know this thing. So, yeah, that shirt is funny. But it's like, yeah, like, because they only incorporate one set of sensors, not even like, depth sensors like, LiDAR or radar, so on. They can't really, figure that thing out. But hey, it's Elon, right? Maybe 5 years along the line, they may scrap half of their system and decide to adapt LiDAR because new technology is coming out and LiDAR is just a much easier path to do, right? So yeah, I think we're just gonna end the stream here. And for those of you who are just tuning in for Meta, yeah, Torch is mentioned, but Meta is not mentioned as I predicted. A lot of just mere hype was circling around surrounding like Meta Tesla or whatever. There are implications, and I can only see 3 implications, which none of it George actually have the ability to do as of right now, and I don't think he's leaning towards doing anything in that direction. But hey, I still hold I might hold some leap year options, but I'm thinking about how to do the spread just in case that some black swan event app happens and George actually hit his head and decided to do something that's actually great. But that probably is the same thing as Tesla mentioning Meta in a presentation. So as for tomorrow's stock price, it's probably gonna. If you haven't watched our Bobby video, Bobby came out and talked to you guys about the option chain and his prediction about where the stock market is gonna go. So go watch that. Definitely, go watch that, and you will have a deeper understanding of what really is going on. And if the stock price actually trend down lower than 2.9, then maybe on next Monday we gotta come back and talk about what's the road ahead, right? A lot of you is gonna get smacked in the head and be like, oh my god, like is it really gonna go to the $1 territory? Maybe, right? So and then George is gonna be like pinching his ass and then be like, oh shit, we were close, right? We're repeating our conversation like a month ago when the stock price is around like 4.5 ish, right? So yeah, that's basically what you need to look for. Also, I suspect that a lot of streamers or YouTubers are gonna talk about RSI. Again, technical analysis is futile, it's useless when it's literally moving under 250 days moving average and the stock price is literally on the verge of getting delisted. So none of that matters. And if they tell you like RSI is making me comfortable, blah blah blah, it's gonna rebound, of course, every day there's a rebound and it's gonna drop back, but the long-term trajectory of where the stock's gonna go is not really gonna change. If you want to know sort of like a deeper understanding of how we drive that understanding, and I mean, time will tell, right? Like maybe 2 months or 3 months later, you're like, oh my god, Didi, you made the right decision to Colossus, and maybe you enter later time, you can make more profit that way, right? You enter later time and you buy option, then you basically using cheaper capital to buy for more leverage. Does that make sense? And yeah, time will tell. But if you guys want to know our detailed understanding or our detailed explanation of why we decided to sell there, or just me, right, Jimmy, because Jimmy still holds it. So you guys can go on to the Patreon. The Patreon link is gonna be linked under every other video now, so from now on, and go join Patreon. The early accessors I think is $10 because we were pretty intoxicated when we decided to put all the price tag on there. And we think the price is pretty fair for the content we're putting out, and a lot of the content might be sort of shocking in terms of like the data, in terms of like the way how you see the world after you see the data and after you see us talk about like the market and talk about what Meta is heading, or just the George DD part. I'm pretty sure just the George DD part and the 2 videos that we already posted on the reasoning why we sort of like a little bit on the neutral side of Meta, well, it's worth the Patreon money for at least 2 to 3 months, because it will save that much of money for you if you listened and sort of like form your own perspective of where the stock's gonna go. I mean, of course, right now a lot of people are saying, you know, $3 might be the floor or whatever, but hey, at $7 or like $6 is the floor, right? And I have very detailed mathematical thing to prove it, but hey, math can only inform you this much because math cannot calculate human. And if you put human on a management team, and sometimes humans are positive, sometimes humans are negative, and when all humans are negative, you have a more negative stock price. That's literally how it goes. And yeah, if you guys want to know about that, just go click on Patreon, and there's gonna be a lot of great content there. And on Patreon, there's gonna be in-depth option tutorial. So on YouTube, there's gonna be like very, you know, on the surface level, like option tutorials kind of stuff. That's gonna be like 10 times, 1,000 times, or in Elon's words, 200 times better than, you know, other channels' videos, because we're gonna incorporate some real life examples. But on Patreon, we're gonna sometimes trade options like live, but not really like making the transaction, because I think we cannot really make transactions on screen because there's liability. So we're gonna literally tell you guys like while we are making the decision, and we're gonna record that video, go make that sale, and come back and post it. And you know, the time lag is gonna be like literally like 30 minutes or maybe 20 minutes. So you probably still can enter if you decided to, you know, agree with our assessment of how the price level goes and the assessment of why this option is profitable. And then on Patreon, we are gonna time to time, in a very timely fashion, sort of tell you guys what we do with our portfolio, what are some new entry points, what are some, you know, newly entered stock, or we just get bored and go listen to other people's earning calls and be like, oh my god, the CFO is amazing, right? Like Fisker CFO, and you know, when you go listen to, you know, Neil's you know, earning call, and be like, interesting, like what they're saying here, but this is what they're really saying, you know, and you know, we get super bored when and also like another thing about Meta is whenever, you know, George come out and talk about his company, it doesn't get me excited. Like, we also have some funny data on Patreon that we're gonna post that you guys are gonna find really funny and be like, oh my god, why did I never see that coming, right? And then you'll be like, oh yeah, no wonder, right? It's going down this path. And I mean, at this point, we don't really care. Like if you believe Sterling or not, if you believe us or whatever, just pick your YouTuber, right? Because we are like more objective. But if you need someone who just come for you every single day, like mothering you or nurturing you and telling you everything's gonna be okay in a couple of years, you know, everything's gonna be fine, and give you like false speculations and give you false like bullish hype, we might not be the channel for you. But we made a lot of like funny videos that does that sort of thing. And just to clarify, like a lot of the quote unquote hype video on this channel are actually sometimes we thought it was funny, so we did that, and half of that is back then we are actually very bullish because we're very naive to think that, you know, we see it this way and the CEO must have been seeing it. But I guess if you're a PhD in metamaterials, you probably don't have a master's degree in advanced finance or in mathematical modeling, so you don't see the financial trajectory as how I see it. So I mean, again, this is just our personal opinion, and we're not financial advisors, therefore we do not give financial advices. So everything we say on this channel is for shits and giggles. I think this is it. Yeah, this is the end of the stream. If you have further questions, go comment down below, and you know, we try to get to every comments. There are a lot of troll comments, and there are a lot of funny comments, and sometimes you just click, you know, like and yeah. I'll see you guys on the upside tomorrow. I might do an afternoon stream tomorrow, but I gotta go talk to number 2 about that. Let's see what time is really good on Friday, or maybe Friday is a bad time to do it, maybe on a Sunday, to ask questions and talk about like inflation results and everything. And I think, you know, just as Elon ended his stream, I ended mine. So there you go. You're welcome, man. Love you too, as always. See you guys on the outside.